You really?
Is it? She and I were in the same PhD cohort. We both worked for Marcus Peterson, so I've known her forever. And I'm like, Blanca, that would be a you problem. This is not part of my base appointment. She's like, I realize that. I realize that. I'm like, no worries. Y'all do you. I'm good over here. I'm fine. This is going to be a dumpster fire. So,
Yeah.
So I just sent an email to everybody at, I don't know, whatever time that was, an hour ago. Are you guys planning for spring already?
You and I need to have that conversation, but we're streaming right now, so we probably don't need to have it. But yeah, we're planning for spring. So
Is John?
I'm not sure.
You mean for our courses here?
Yeah.
Man, we haven't talked about spring yet. I mean, in theory, it's going to be in person because we're in person right now for most things. But
I mean, in terms of just even plans, we've got to have everything finalized by September 14th.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that yet. I mean, it may be happening at some other level. Stuff's on the calendar, but I don't know what it's going to look like, to be honest with you, Warren.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but it's just like we're 8 days in, right? We're
everyone has COVID on campus. You can't swing a dead cat and not hit someone infected with COVID right now. So, I mean, even the president sent out an email today and said, all right, we've done the math. This is not an us problem. This is a you partying problem. So for the president to come out and say, hey, cut it out, dimwits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think we're streaming. I don't have anyone in the chat room yet, and I really I need to look at the. Hey, yeah, there. I think we do have some people here now. We're not good at podcast and streaming. We are not broadcast professionals. So welcome to a very subpar and inadequate podcast, if you even want to call that. What I do want to see from everybody, I think there's probably a 30-second delay or so between what we're saying here and what pops up on the stream, but an active chat really helps us talk about the things that we need to talk about and helps us interact with our audience a little more. So welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Blake Grisham. I'm the faculty advisor for the Wildlife Society at Texas Tech and an assistant. No, I'm an associate now, so I don't know why I forgot that. That was a lot of work. I'm an associate professor of wildlife management at Texas Tech in the Department of Natural Resources. And we're joined by a few other people here, including our full-time co-host from here on out. So I'll turn it over to Dr. John Tomachek and let him introduce himself, and then we'll talk about everyone else here tonight. So welcome, guys. John?
Hi, everybody. I'm John Tomachek. I'm an assistant professor at Texas A&M University. I'm the faculty advisor for the Texas A&M student chapter of the Wildlife Society. I'm also your Texas chapter of the Wildlife Society president until February.
Very nice. Dr. Conway?
So, hello, everybody. My name is Warren Conway. I'm the department chair for the Department of Natural Resources Management at Texas Tech. Been there since 2014 in this current role for just over a year. The anniversary was a couple days ago. As I was saying earlier, it's been an interesting year with 2020 and COVID and everything going on. So similar to John, I guess it was in 2013, I was the Texas chapter president for the Texas chapter of the Wildlife Society, and Dr. Grisham and I have been co-advisors for the student chapter at Tech for the last 4 or 5 years. So during the spring when Blake tried this, I did not join in. We were just dealing with other things at that point in time. So I'm glad to be here and look forward to seeing where this goes this evening.
Yeah, it could be a dumpster fire like 2020 has been, or it could be subpar and inadequate, which we expect, or it could be somewhat good. And we hope it's the latter. But
we're looking for marginally entertaining.
Yeah, right. What was the students' description of the food at the field station our first year there?
It didn't suck.
Yeah, it didn't suck, but there was something. Man, what was his name? Dustin. Mediocre to utter shit was his description of the food. And to be fair to the field station, everyone, it's good food compared to what you guys had at some of the other places that you told me about in previous field classes. But so I guess we are streaming live. There are people talking on the chat, so that's a relief. And, I was actually worried about that because it's been long since it's been 4 or 5 months since I've been doing this. Um, but the goal here is to be honest with you guys and provide relevant information to being a wildlife professional. And me aside, you have a current president and a past president of the Texas chapter of the Wildlife Society here. So our viewers, I encourage you to take advantage of that, and you have their time and attention. And, beyond the professional side of us being experts in our field and serving our discipline via the Wildlife Society, we're just a bunch of middle-aged dudes, and we have kind of the similar teaching philosophy. Um, uh, Even though we are at different universities, we care about you guys. We want to see you succeed. Um, but at the same time, we're going to be real with you, and we're going to let you know how to succeed in our world. And it's not our world. I mean, our collective discipline where we have numerous people from around the world representing um, what they want to do with wildlife and wildlife conservation. And it's a pretty tough world because all those people make it very competitive because they're very, very passionate about what they do. So beyond all this, I hope you see that we're passionate about what we do and we're excited about the things that we do. So we do have a schedule tonight, which, everything in the past, including all my lectures, are just winging it. But we took the time to write out an agenda, and it might go swimmingly or, dumpster fire. But basically, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a few updates, and then we're going to get into the major segments of the show. We really don't have a time limit. This will be recorded for YouTube's and Spotify's and all those things that probably aren't plural. But to begin, Dr. Conway is, not only a faculty advisor to the Wildlife Society and past president, he's also the chairman of the Department of Natural Resources at Texas Tech. So I've asked him just to provide a really brief status update on the department, both with logistics and classes and what we're doing with COVID and things beyond that in terms of cool science and all the things that we're doing here. So, Warren, take it away.
Sure. So we actually get some, and I guess wearing an administrator hat, everybody likes numbers. So we got a
let's circle back around.
Yeah. So we got an email this morning, and we are currently in NRM. We have almost 420 total students. So 390 undergrads, I think, or I'm sorry, 350 undergrads and about 60 grad students, with a couple that, for whatever reason, haven't paid their bills or something. So they haven't shown up yet. So the reason I start off with that is we're 1 or 2 students shy of an all-time record for enrollment in NRM, which is I guess indicative of the past trends, but it's also, I think, speaks to what we're trying to do in the department, and I think it kind of speaks to the passion for our students. I mean, given where we are in the current world right now, the fact that we have that many students enrolled in our courses, and we're all trying to navigate COVID right now, it speaks to, I think, what we're trying to do professionally and personally, and working with the students. So as everybody on the call, students here at Tech and A&M and other people that may have logged in, it's been a challenge, obviously, to try to provide courses and provide this semester in a manner that's sort of traditional with wildlife programs. So what we've done in our department is we've pretty much gone to our lectures being online, but we are still maintaining a significant component of field and face-to-face activities for our labs. And that's kind of how our hybrid models, quote unquote, works in our department. I've learned recently that's actually pretty unique across the Texas Tech campus. Other hybrid models are where some of the students may be experiencing that. They rotate in an individual classroom one day, they might be online a different day. So what we're doing is a little different. So far, I haven't heard too many issues. But I think, we're doing the best that we can. And some of you may have joined when we were talking, we're already in plans for what we're going to be doing in the spring in terms of courses. And the word modality was something I learned back in March and April. I didn't know what that word meant before. So course modality, all these other terms that I'm getting to learn. So that's where we are in terms of on-campus classes, student activities, and those sorts of things. Our student chapter, they're going to give a brief update here in a moment about their first meeting. Most of those are going online as well. But despite all this, our faculty, our grad students, and our undergrad students, we've been really active still on the research side. So there are a lot of new projects. We have new faculty members that have come in. We've got some new projects that are starting that I've heard about. Some of our faculty members have gotten grants from USDA. We got one from Alaska Game and Fish and Department of Defense. People are actively writing proposals to get new grants, new students, and this is relevant for, I think, why everybody's on the call and on the chat tonight. Is I think most of our students really want to get out in the field. They want to get hands-on experience. They want to go catch animals, right? That's often kind of why we get hooked. So we're still working to ensure those experiences happen. And I think that's a hallmark and a trademark of what we're trying to do here in our department. And I think it's also something that Dr. Tomachek is trying to do at A&M. And it also mirrors what they're doing in Kingsville and Silver Ross, our other friends and partners down there. So, we got an email for those of you that on the Texas Tech campus. I think students may have gotten an email as well from the president around 4:30 this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, faculty did. I don't know if students did or not.
Yeah, did the students get it?
Did.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys get an official finger wave.
Mm-hmm.
Better behave over Labor Day weekend. Don't be knuckleheads. And so I don't know where that might go. We're 8 or 9 days into the semester now. So I think we're all seeing what other campuses are doing, and hopefully we can avoid a drastic deviation from what we're currently doing.
And,
so,
Warren, can I cut in for half a second here?
Yeah.
So when the upper admin of any organization sends out an email, it's generally vaguely worded for a really good reason. And when there's details, it's also for a very good reason. And when you have a collaborator or something like Parks and Wildlife or Fish and Wildlife Service say something definitively, that's a major statement, and you should pay attention to it. So I like Skovanek's statement here. We know, not suspect or have calculate. We know through our contract tracing efforts, i.e., we've done the math, that most of our positive cases are the result of parties and other social gatherings that are taking place off campus. John gets it. He knows exactly what the admin's saying there. Yeah, he's like, cut it out, you little shitheads, because we're going to have to shut everything down. It's going to cost you money, and then in the end, you're going to come back and blame us. But we have the data to show that it's not us, it's you. So keep that in mind, because that's exactly what the underlying tone implies there. Learn to read between the lines. So keep that in mind. Just so Warren, I want to be the person to say that, not you, because well, they do fire me. Talking to the boss.
No, I appreciate that, and I think over time, and I guess this might be a lesson to learn for students is crafting and reading and interpreting emails is more of an art than a science.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, reading between the lines is really important. And that was a pretty clear statement today. So, so I don't know. Yeah. And I don't know. So I don't know where we're going to be in 2 weeks, but this is kind of where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd be happy to answer any questions as time, during the video. What are we calling this?
I don't know. It started as a podcast, but it got kiboshed because the first shut down. And that's what we planned on doing. So the plan of this was to do it in the classroom with microphones,
right?
Everybody live audience, and that would be an official podcast because we could just record it and upload it. But then we just did this because of the pandemic, and I mean it's podcast / stream / video / I don't know what. And there might be some terminology. John, do you have terminology there?
I think, my dear Dr. Grisham, that it caught fire.
Uh-huh.
You know, like, oh, this idea really caught fire and caught on, but it caught fire in the Corona era. So it's kind of a floating dumpster fire. I mean, it's getting around, but I don't know what it is, but
Yeah,
it's,
so if COVID's an aerial droplet, this is just a floating dumpster fire. So I don't
So
know what
people
to
are-
call it.
So
But
people are watching it burn as it floats by them.
yeah, I mean, so most of our viewers are here just to watch us crash and burn, and I'm okay with that. It's not the first time I failed at something. I just want to, prove to my students that I practice what I preach, and failure is a really good option. Yeah, podcast stream. I don't know. Maybe our viewers can tell us. Maybe they're more technology something than we are, because it's clear that we are not.
I have no doubt of that. My friends, we're middle-aged white guys. We don't know what we're doing. We're just having fun, and the young ones will tell us what it is we're actually doing.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Olivia. Olivia said we can call it whatever we want. So that's a good student. That's why she's at Solmouse now.
Thank you.
And hold it up says it's a stream, so I'll let that person, Olivia, find it out. So thanks for the update, Dr. Conway. Appreciate that.
Sure.
And a serious note to all our students: we want to get back out in the field and have fun, and I want to get in the classroom and see you without high risk for not only myself but especially you guys. It is what it is, but it won't be something different until behavior changes. Just being bluntly honest there. And you may be part of the problem, you may not, but have a chat with your friends who go out and party. All right. So, Dr. Tomacek, do you have any updates for A&M or our Aggie friends who are on the phone call, or anything else?
Yeah, sure. Well, I can do an update, Blake, both for the Aggies on the call, but also just in general for everybody in the wildlife profession.
Please,
I
thank
like what Warren said there about us. Kind of, we have similar philosophies, similar backgrounds. We like the same things. We want the same things for our profession, for our students. So I'm really excited to hear about what's going on at Tech in terms of your record numbers and really coming up and doing some amazing things. So for those out there that haven't been really tied in with A&M the last couple of years, the Wildlife and Fisheries program at A&M has been around, fun fact, since the Pittman-Robertson Act was signed. That was the year that the department came into existence for the same reason. But we and the Ecosystem Sciences Department were kind of dissolved and then restructured about 9 months ago officially. And so now you have most of us that were applied hands-on management types. We're over in the new Rangeland Wildlife and Fisheries Management Program, which is still kind of coming together and getting itself underneath. But really the idea is we're getting back to those hands-on, very applied roots that the range and wildlife and fisheries programs always had. Our colleagues that do a lot of kind of foundational biology, ecology, they're over in the new Ecology Conservation Biology Department doing awesome stuff. And so we're kind of going through the shuffling period where everybody's getting to build a new identity, do something new and fun. And so that department's coming online. And I can say, being on the curriculum committees for that program, man, we're going to have some fun, hands-on, very field-based courses and experiences for those students. So that's all going on part and parcel. For us in the Corona situation, kind of like same thing as Tech, wildlifers everywhere. We've been lucky in the research world because so much of what we do is considered very low risk. And so we're still out there doing our work when we can. Research contracts are coming in. Students and technicians are getting hired. They're out there doing good stuff and make me proud every single day. Shout out to the Texas Tech NRM program for producing my newest master's student who is out there really kicking it and doing great stuff.
She actually she sent me a text the other day that said something along the lines of, "I appreciate and understand why you wrote the emails the way you did when you were a professor." And that goes back to crafting and reading between the lines in the email. And that made me really proud. She finally.
So where we are with classes right now, same kind of idea where our hybrid scenario is very similar to what Warren described. We're doing a lot of lectures online because, hey, it's a lecture. And then most of the field components, the field labs, are still being done outdoors or in classrooms, depending on what's appropriate. And we're trying to get outside as much as we can. And I got to really brag on my student chapter of the Wildlife Society kids. They're doing some amazing things, planning some professional development events, getting out to properties across the state that A&M either owns and controls or friends and partners do to get their members some of those experiences, right? So what I always tell students is you come to school, you go get a wildlife degree or a range degree or NRM or whatever you happen to call it. and you can go to class and you can knock it out of the park in those classes. But what makes the difference so many times is, what other things do you know how to do? Did you get involved with your student chapter? Did you learn how to do some skills and have some abilities and develop a network outside of that? And so despite coronavirus situation, I'm watching our students try to get those activities together, to get out in the field, to learn things from professionals and kind of build themselves. So, for us right now, we're just trying to make our way through the murky landscape of coronavirus at A&M. We're an extraordinarily large college campus, so we haven't had that cracking the whip email from administration yet, but I'm sure it's coming, because we have the same kind of problems that tech is dealing with, in terms of students want to know why things are not the way they want them to be. And then, we see the photos of pool parties where you couldn't shoehorn another kid into the pool if you wanted to. So yeah, everybody wants to be out in the field. We're wildlifers. I miss the field. I miss my students. I miss being out there, but we're going to get through this together. And I think the important thing, what I love about these podcasts, I'll just say, guys, is students get to see that across universities and across programs, we're more alike than we are different. We're really cut out of the same kind of fabric. And so I love this opportunity for everybody to get to know their peers at the other institutions and get to kind of see that statewide perspective.
Yep. And I think some of your students are on the stream now, and welcome, guys. It's great to have you here. And we didn't get to talk about it before the call, but Dr. Tomachek and Dr. Conway and myself and the student officers are going to have a meeting with you guys and hope to get you incorporated into this officially. And we look forward to working with you guys. So welcome. With that, Dr. Tomachek, we're trying to do the similar things at TTU TWS, and to give us an update on our meetings and our plans is the president, Sophie Morris. So Sophie, I'm going to turn it over to you for a few minutes here, and why don't you provide our viewers with a little bit of update on our activities and plans for the upcoming semester.
Great, yeah, so we had our first meeting yesterday, and it was on Zoom, and we had a really good showing, which was nice. We had very few technical problems, which was good, not none, but very few. And I'm just going to run through some of the things that. Yes?
You are. Okay.
Is it better?
You're just cutting out left and right.
Oh, no. Okay. If I cut out, just let me know and I'll go back.
We'll fill in for you. We'll wing it. All right.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So I'm just going to run through some of the things you can do to get involved this semester that we already have planned and went over yesterday. So the first are two committees. We have a media committee with Peyton Hess. So if you're interested in taking photos or getting more involved in writing, we have a Prairie Ponderings, which is our newsletter, and you can help her with that. Also, if you have photos that you want posted, you can send those to Peyton and she'll use those for advertisements, for meetings and other flyers that we're gonna produce. And then we have a fundraiser committee with our VP Brandon. That was the game dinner committee. Because that is not happening this year, we changed it over. And he is working on a TTU TWS calendar. And for that calendar, we're going to have a photo competition. So that'll be a lot of fun, and he'll need a lot of help with that. And we're going to have a few game nights. Our first one's going to be September 24th. Justin and our other captain of the Quiz Bowl team are going to run those. Those will be a lot of fun, and you won't just have to sit there and listen to me like the meetings. So that should be a plus. And you can also get better with your wildlife trivia skills and learn some new stuff. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then we will have a white-tailed deer capture. That will be at the beginning of November or the end of October. There are limited spots for that. So we will be having a 3-minute thesis competition like we did last year for the coyote capture. I highly recommend competing in that if you are at all interested in attending the white-tailed deer capture. The 3-minute thesis competition is honestly a lot of fun to compete in. You get to meet a lot of people, and we get to meet you, which is a plus since we're not in person this year. We have our next meeting, the third Wednesday of the month. That should be a lot of fun. And the meetings this year, 3 of them are going to have a random gift card drawing. So if you are in attendance, you have the chance to get a little extra money, which is good. And then I'm going to turn it over to Justin Dossie, our treasurer, so he can talk about membership and dues.
So Justin, while you talk, I'm going to put the information up for our viewers about dues and things like that. So go for it.
All right. So first off is membership. The good thing about TWS is there's no membership application. It'll be $25 for a single semester or $50 for both, and that'll come with a free t-shirt. Membership will allow for participation in the wildlife captures, and it will cover the expenses of the usual camping trips. You can pay us via Venmo at TTU-TWS, all caps, or via PayPal at our email, ttutws@gmail.com. If you'd prefer to pay in person, some of us officers will be at the Plant and Soil Sciences building, room 150, tomorrow, Friday, September the 4th, between 10 and 2, and also Wednesday, September 9th, during the same hours. These will also be the times to pick up t-shirts, and more times will be announced later. We're also going to be selling various merch. T-shirts will be $20. A gray trucker style hat will be $20. A green hat will be $15. And we'll have stickers at 1 for $3, 2 for $5, 3 for $7. And lastly, patches at 1 for $5, 2 for $7, and 3 for $10.
And you guys just give me half a second here. And what I have is in the second slide here are all those things that Justin talked about, and I was busy typing in the chat. But those are the materials we have. So those are the stickers there, the patches, the green style shirt, the new shirt, which I'm wearing right now, the Richardson 112 gray hats, and then some of these old green hats. And I think that's it for materials right now. Is that correct, Justin?
That is.
Okay. And then, in addition to that stuff, Warren and Dr. Conway and I have been busy getting some of these similar materials for the department, which we'll have more information on that when we get everything lined out. And some of you guys have seen the sneak peeks, but that stuff is really cool too. So I put the information in the chat for our viewers about that material, and John was just modeling the other hat. So thank you very much. I forgot mine today. So with that, our final update are from TTU TWS is Peyton. Do you have any information for us about the social media committees or anything that you would like to share?
Yes. So if y'all just want to stay up to date with what we're doing in TWS, then you can follow our social media accounts. You can find our Instagram and Facebook by searching TTU, the Wildlife Society, or our Twitter, TTU TWS. And it'll just help you with knowing when our meetings are and knowing what kind of activities or events we're going to do throughout the semester. And yeah.
Okay. And I think we have some of that information on the Twitch channel as well for our viewers. I updated the information today. So some of that should be in writing on the Twitch channel. But if not, please reach out to us. We'll make sure you get the information. So Sophie and Justin and Peyton, do you have any other information you'd like to share about TTU TWS for the semester?
We will have a few more ways to be involved in our next couple of meetings, so make sure you come to those to hear what you can do in the club. But I think that's it. Okay.
Well, bye. Thank you guys very much for sharing that information for us. It's time for the big boys to talk now. Thank you guys very much. And we appreciate you guys chiming in tonight and providing us that information. So next month, hopefully, we'll have some similar information from our friends at A&M, and as well as some additional information about things we have planned at Texas Tech. Dr. Conway and I are working with numerous collaborators and stuff across the state to get more capture opportunities and get out in the field. It's just tough right now. So please be patient with us as we do those kinds of things. So Justin, Sophie, Peyton, thank you guys for tuning in, joining us tonight.
Good night.
And we're going to get into the three dudes talking about stuff.
I want to say, Dr. Grisham, while you're transitioning into that, your comment about, hey, be patient with us, man, that's what I've been telling the students here is we all want to go do fun stuff.
Yeah.
And we are bound by so many rules and regs right now, man, be patient with us. That's what I've heard from everybody across the state, And I just want to say to your chapter right now, if there's an opportunity when things get safe for us to do things again, to get together and do some trapping education, get out and run some trap lines, man, I can't wait to do it. I will load my happy self up in my pickup full of equipment and drive to Lubbock to come work with you. So
John, same thing. Dr. Tomacek to the students, don't call him John. That's a good way to piss him off. Just making up words for you. We want to get out in the field. Trust me. But one of the things about being a professional is we have to default to what our supervisors tell us. And universities are always going to be the most conservative institute around. One, it's based on the pursuit of knowledge, so they take the expert words. And two, there's a large I can't use words. There's a large group of people that they have to protect. So as I modify multi-syllable words to phrases, we're just stuck with what we can and can't do right now. So,
and as I remind all my students all the time, academia is not a democratic institution. It is a medieval institution, and we listen to what the king or queen tells us to do.
It's absolutely right. Yeah, that's a good segue into our first segment. What's pissing you guys off today?
Well,
Yeah.
I want to hear what's pissing Warren off.
Yeah, Warren, why don't you tell us? This is the soapbox edition. If this were a good podcast, we might have a transition slide or some kind of graphic, like soapbox and a bar of soap slides across. This is both low financial and logistical effort here, as in $0, and we're literally just making this shit up as we go. So.
Well, that could be something we can work towards.
Yeah, maybe we can hire somebody to do those graphics for us. My problem is I watch too much Top Gear where they have good cinematography and journalists.
No, it's good to have goals, guys. We always got to have goals.
So what's pissing you guys off?
So I guess so. Following what John just said. So being middle management sucks.
So for the kids viewing ecologically, this is both top down and bottom up trophically.
Yeah.
It's getting eaten up from both ends.
Because it's just emails and planning, and so we've been dealing with planning for months, and then it just unravels in like 8 days.
8 days. I wonder if somebody had to pull on how fast this was all real. Mine was 14 days, but I was obviously being conservative given the 14-day window for. But 8 days is, man, those tech kids really showed their party skills, so to speak. But that's what happens when you invite them here 2 weeks beforehand.
What is it that you say at Texas Tech? Wreck 'em? Yeah, you got that one down.
So Dr. Conway was telling us prior to the call that the number of emails he gets, you answer approximately 120 a day. Just answer.
Yeah. But those are the ones I actually answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I quit counting. So at one point during like the pandemic, I don't know. I think I sent close to 200 one day. It's just, it's one of those things. Everybody's doing everything electronically and whatnot. But this is kind of one of those lessons to students. Maybe we're jumping ahead. But it's even more important now. Email etiquette.
Yep. We'll get to that. We'll have a whole section. So find something else that pisses you off, Warren, because I know it's pissed.
Well, that's sort of in perpetuity.
Yeah, that one doesn't go away. I wish it could.
Yeah.
I wish we could treat emails like we do the peer review system. Just at every email you have an accept, reject, major revision, minor revision. And when you get an email as a faculty member, you just get to hit a button. And it's like accept, and then you can reply, or reject, and it just trashes it. And then major revision, you get to say, here, you got to change this before I'll address it. And then minor revisions. I thought about that the other night. That would be a dream scenario for me.
That'd be really entertaining.
It would be, and it'd train especially our graduate students on what to expect in the peer review process, which I would be extremely liberal with that reject button. Because I'm having similar but different issues with emails than you are.
Well, it's not atypical. It's just more of it because it's really the only way that we're communicating with people.
Yeah.
The random pop-ins, of so those have reduced dramatically, except for there's like 2 or 3 people that really seem to enjoy random pop-ins. And I don't think the delay on this isn't long enough, so I'm not gonna get into detail of who those people were. But I completely changed my office around so nobody could kind of come in on my side door and sneak up on me and make it even more awkward than it is now, having a conversation with somebody face to face.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's like, I think at least for me, I've been on campus since June 1st, really. And so whenever I actually see somebody face to face, it's weird.
I went there today to deliver those materials to you, and I had to do some other things in my office, and it was only the 3rd time I've been in there since March 23rd. And
Yeah.
I got an email from a student yesterday, said, "Hey, I went by your office. You weren't there." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I
Yeah.
was at home.
Well,
Like-
and then on Friday we had a gas leak, so that was fun. And so we evacuated the building, and then I got kind of scolded because we evacuated the building and it was actually okay.
And you got scolded
So-
for that?
Yeah.
You know, if we want to get on our soapbox, I was pissed off that your texts and emails woke me up from my nap that afternoon. That's the difference between an associate professor and a department chair on a Friday afternoon.
This is part of the Corona world right now, guys. The nap has happened again. I gotta say, for me, in the Corona world, it's been strange not seeing people, and the email traffic, Warren. It's like there's a function that goes on here. The more you send, the more you receive, and so you kind of create this
Yep.
ever-going cycle. But I gotta say, I mean, I think I've been exercising more and sleeping more than I have in years because we're stuck in the house all the time.
Yep.
And I got to say, the lack of travel, the lack of movement. I mean, there's too much of that, but that's what's pissing me off right now. It's like something so simple. Students are in the field. I want to hop in the truck and go be in the field this weekend because that's what I need to go do. Nope, that requires 5 different permissions and a sign off by the department head and this and that. And is it mission critical?
Mhm.
Well, no, the grad students can do it. Well, then you don't need to go. Oh, what the hell? That's why we do what we do. Those are the fun moments, right? So we've cut out all the fun moments and we're left with sitting in front of a screen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
during like through the summer until like maybe the first week in August,
Mhm.
my grad students, I had a rule for them. Don't text or call me or email me between 1 and 2 p.m. I'm sleeping. I am napping. Don't bother me at all. And you know, to be fair, the converse of that is I've had the most productive summer ever. In terms, you and I are working on the grant. I got another gift. There's 7 papers submitted with my name on them. There's more in draft and all that. And I actually updated most of my course material and all those things. And you're absolutely right. With I've mastered, the nap and being at home, all those things are great, but not only travel for field work and things, but just traveling with friends. I miss all those things a lot. It's not pissing me off because I know there's risk associated with it and I'm willing, to, take those risks, but it's frustrating. It's
Yeah.
really frustrating. And, I don't know what's pissing me off today. I think I'm just in a constant state of frustration, but this is a real soapbox. I was hoping it'd be more lighthearted. Like today, I was really pissed off because have you guys ever tried to open a Gatorade lid on one of these things? Like,
Yeah, you just open it, Bubba.
yeah, this one's open, but get a new bottle and try to open up one of these lids, and your bone will snap out of your arm. And I was pissed. I was like strained my shoulder trying to open up the damn bottle. So that was pissing me off earlier. And then I'm also pissed off because there's no good fruit in season. But I told you guys that in email the other day. Like,
Yeah. I got some apricots curbside the other day.
Mhm.
I could kill somebody with those things. They're hard as rocks. What
Yep.
the hell is that?
so my friends know
You
me.
turned into Kramer, Blake, all of a sudden
What do you mean?
from Seinfeld. He was like getting a good fruit from the fruit stand. You turned into Kramer on us.
Oh yeah, and like I'm a frutivore in the summer, and I went to extremes this year with it because I didn't have anything else to do. It's like I'll become like some kind of connoisseur of fruit. But I eat a lot of fruit, and like my friends and I had this like little wager: how many bags of cherries can I eat this summer? And the answer was 58. I ate 58 bags of cherries between the end of April and like 2 weeks ago when I stopped buying them because 2 bags cost me like $28 on accident. And so, and that's what's pissed me off. Is like stone fruit was so expensive. And the only thing that's really coming into season now is apples. Who likes apples? Aside from Honeycrisp, everything else sucks. So,
Agreement. Honeycrisp are delightful.
yeah, everything. Apples are subpar and inadequate fruits. They really are.
Well, we got some zucchini if you want some.
I mean, I'll drink my water. Thank you. So,
So Tamberly figured out it was a chocolate zucchini, chocolate cake with zucchini in it. It's kind of like, supposedly like zucchini bread, except
Yeah.
she modified it and made it really like unhealthy.
mhm.
But it's really a good way to get rid of zucchini. If you guys have ever grown a garden,
Yeah,
and
it's always the zucchini that takes off.
right, yeah.
I mean, it, I don't know. It's like the dandelion. You really don't want it, but you got plenty of it.
Yeah.
The garden world.
Well, we couldn't grow a tomato, but we can get zucchinis.
I've never had success with tomatoes. And welcome to the podcast, folks. Three of those guys talking about tomatoes and crops. And
Here's what you need to do with your maters.
exactly. Like we're fairly boring. So welcome to our.
I will say this, so I grew up kind of like you did, Blake, and Warren, I actually don't know about you. I grew up in the country and we had a big garden, and you always have too much of everything, right? So you try to spread it around. And for years, my wife has made fun of me. She grew up in the city because I save bags from bread and tortillas and potatoes and everything else. Why do you save those? Because when I have too many zucchini, I put them in a bread bag and I leave them on somebody's front steps. And I go, I brought you zucchini. You're welcome.
In a normal year, when we're not working from home and stuff, this is when the break room is full of random zucchinis brought in from other people. There's like maybe someone will take them, and 3 months later they're rotten. Warren, someone wants maybe it's Alyssa Freeman. Hopefully, maybe that's her. She wants that zucchini recipe from Tamberly. So,
Okay. I'll have to ask my wife. It's really, and so so unlike John, who may be exercising and sleeping better, like I'm probably doing neither. So I'm getting my vegetables via zucchini chocolate cake, it's really good.
So, before Bill Cosby went full Bill Cosby and, you couldn't talk about Bill Cosby.
Where's that delay?
He has a really good segment about cake for breakfast, but that's,
Yes. Yeah.
It wasn't, but it's taboo now. So kids go
Yeah.
Bill Cosby cake for breakfast.
Chocolate cake and eggs from the chickens. That's a pretty good breakfast.
Yeah. And our kitchen is in disrepair right now because I'm pissed off at myself more than anything because amidst the pandemic, I'm like, hey, I'll remodel the fucking kitchen. And that's my problem with the whole pandemic is I started watching HGTV and I'm like, hey, maybe I need to do these things to my house. I have all this free time. The TV was telling me to better myself in some way. So after I learned how to do this and you see where we are now, I'm like, maybe I can make some improvements to my house. So I did some small things. And then I did some bigger things. And I'm like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. And then Micah Rainey and I got that. Well, I got the idea. I talked Micah into it to help me tear down the dollhouse in the backyard from the previous owners. And it all went downhill. And, $50,000 later, I need a new kitchen. So here we are. And
So did this coincide with you asking for a pay increase from your department head? I mean, I'm seeing a trend here.
No, luckily he got it the year before.
I got it. I was going to say that was last year when
Oh man.
we quote unquote worked the system, and I got some six figures behind my name.
Ooh, look at you go. So this is
that like a humble brag or just a straight out brag?
That was
Yeah,
a straight
that
up
was-
brag.
that was
Okay.
that was
Good at someone that don't do it for free, right?
that was pretty highbrow, Arkansas. I mean, I'm really proud of you. You're like,
I tell my students all the time, especially in class, we're in wildlife habitat right now, and they're presenting their first management plans next week. And I actually got permission from Dr. Campbell and the East Foundation to use one of their ranches as an example.
nice.
And I told them, I said, okay, you need to work within the guidelines of the East Foundation philosophy and make sure that your plans are ecologically justifiable. But you inherently fail if you don't sell yourself. If they don't buy your product, then you have failed, regardless of what you tell yourself. So I tell them, it's like, you got to learn to brag on yourself a little bit and do a little bit better, a little bit beyond what the other groups might do. And that's what we're going to teach them in the class. So yeah, I'll brag on myself every once in a while.
But you know, Blake, I think that's a really good point, because in this field, most of the people drawn to wildlife are just not the kind that like to brag on themselves or really like self-promote. That's not what we do. But there are times in your career where you have to definitely toot your own horn and, don't lie about it, but say what you're good at. Say what you've done that's good to know, and what people need to hear. That's, for me, been the hardest thing over the years.
It's really hard to do because you have to learn how to balance being a complete car salesman, and then not underselling yourself. And if you're really good at those kinds of things and you're really sincere about what your goals are, you'll use those things to invest back in. And I'm thankful enough to say that I do that, and I've been taught to do that. But yeah, I got a new kitchen out of it. It's just, we work with a really small company. They're great people. I'm the most patient person on earth. I've literally sat in the turkey blind for hours in South Louisiana and just waited. My significant other, not so much. So conflict there, and the only person I'm mad at is myself. But soon I'll have a new kitchen, and I'll be able to do this cooking blog, which all the kids are recommending now. Because actually, I do love to cook, because there's an end product. Because in the scientific method, there is no end product. It's just a circular, motion of suck, with the final step being told in the peer review process that you're not good enough. So
you are, as they say, subpar and inadequate.
You are. I submitted a really nice review today. It was a long review, but it was one of my nicer ones. And I was quite proud of myself for doing that. I'm like, I think this is worthy of publication, but you got a lot of work to do. And it was my nice way of saying, hey, this is as presented as subpar and inadequate, but at least we can fix it.
Yeah.
So this is for all the graduate students and potential grad students on the call. Wildlife science is actually, it's the process of gaining reliable knowledge about terrestrial, non-domesticated, free-ranging vertebrates. But the end product, that process is you publish information for dissemination for our state and federal agencies to use in a reliable manner, and our NGOs. And the end process sucks. It's just, no matter how good you think it is, it can be better. So keep that in mind. It's hard. And that's why, while we have we three on this call right now telling our students that, we can be idiots at times, we've been told by others the same thing. So we're used to it. So, soapbox, over. We're mad as hell, and we're not going to do anything about it. So.
We're going to go be frustrated about other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So, what I really like about the current cohort of students and undergrads and kids coming in and ones that recently left Texas Tech is they understand the benefits of really good mental health. And it's not a stigma, and it shouldn't be, because mental health is just as important, if not as more important as physical health. And when I was growing up, you couldn't talk about these things because you got to work harder. Like, no, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I do have anxiety. Yeah. Maybe I do have OCD. And they're really good about talking about some of those things. And for us, it's like you just take those emotions and you shove them way down, and you find some unhealthy outlet for it later. So yeah, that's why we're frustrated and not going to do anything about it, because we've been taught that it's taboo to talk about those things. So
yeah, right. I mean, we come from a different era. Do not do as we have done, right? There are some things we do well and things we don't. Learn the easy way.
Yeah.
When something's not a good idea, we promise it's not a good idea.
It is not a good idea. And with all the COVID stuff going on to our students, you're on this call, we do care about you. There is nothing wrong with seeking help for whatever it may be. And we encourage, and we are not counselors, as you can tell, but we do have professional resources with the universities that we work for to help you out with that. And we encourage you guys to reach out to us if you want to. Everything's confidential, to help you get those resources you need. And don't be afraid. So
that's a good point, Blake. Is one thing I would say to add to that is we talk about professionalism. I mean, till we're blue in the face, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing I remind people is when you get out of school as a wildlife scientist, you want people to listen to you because you're a professional. Mm-hmm. There are people who are professionals in mental health. For real, it's a profession. Listen to them. they know what they're doing.
Exactly. And thankfully, I know at least Texas Tech provides
Mhm.
professionals and or professionals in training with the supervision of professionals to help you guys out for limited or no cost. And you really should take advantage of that. Like in all seriousness, speaking to a counselor once a month or once every 2 weeks should be just as much a priority as getting on a treadmill. They're really useful. They teach us not to dig those things down, but to express them in healthy outlets, which I haven't mastered that yet. Okay, I just hide my insecurities in this beard. So that's where we're at. So soapbox over. Um, this is where the cue would come in to transition, but we don't have that. It's just our ugly faces here as usual. So what I am going to transition to is wildlife news. Um, and I asked my co-host here to pick out an article with recent wildlife related news to discuss for our audience and how the implications not only exist for the wildlife, but also for policy and future generations. And there's some fancy way on this software I can pull up websites, but it's lost on me right now. So I'm just going to slide this over to the other desktop so they can see the article. I'm going to hide our co-authors for just a second. And then, my subpar and inadequate computer is popping up with very slowly. So what I have here, if you can see it, and based on at least my view, it looks very small, so I'm going to try to highlight it here. Is the news article I want to talk about is the proposed changes to the definition of habitat under the Endangered Species Act. And I'm not going to read all of this, but in essence, in 1976, the ESA was amended from the original act passed in 1973 to include some information about the listing and delisting process of species that are listed as warranted for inclusion under the ESA. And one of those changes was the designation of what we call critical habitat. And critical habitat is a very it's a very legal specific term because I'm going to move this over so I can actually talk to my co-authors about this because they know this stuff too, that we have standardized definitions for habitat and ecology and wildlife management. Critical habitat, as defined by Hall in 1997 and other Aggies, I think, and Wildlife Society Bulletin, designated critical habitat. It's a legal term that is habitat or habitat that could support the species of interest under the ESA. And that's all it is, period. Whereas the traditional definition of habitat in that same publication, which went on to standardize our terminology, was habitat is food, water, cover, range, and space and time. That is where it can be acquired by the animal, some animal. So habitat is species specific. And I was teaching my class the other day some of these standardized terms, like there's no such thing as wildlife habitat. There is northern bobwhite habitat. There is coyote habitat, because animals have different habitat needs at different life stages as well as at different spatial scales. So this proposed change is actually the change by the current administration in the DOI is to change that designation of critical habitat. Simply because the current existing definition in the ESA says anything that's potential habitat is critical habitat. And I'm going to give you a relevant example of how that's a nightmare in just a second. Whereas the proposed change is critical habitat, when you change, the proposed change is it goes from potential habitat to habitat or to areas that have food, water, and cover for the species as is. So it takes out the potential habitat feature in that critical designation. So for you guys who are readers, I'll put this back up here in case I didn't explain that well enough, is this section right here. As defined in the proposed rule, habitat contains food, water, cover, or space that species depends upon to carry out one or more of its life processes. This broad definition includes both occupied and unoccupied critical habitat. The proposed change is to take out the unoccupied component to that. And so there's pros and cons to it depending on individual species. But if the proposed change would make critical habitat the same as habitat as defined as that Hall 1997 paper. So that's the proposed change. And I haven't heard much from it now. But one of the pros is habitat, and you don't have to consider anything that could be habitat. One of the cons is there's certain species where they may no longer exist, but it still meets the requirements, and reintroductions may be possible. And under critical habitat as designated now, that area could be identified as a place for reintroductions. So that's one of the huge cons, and they're debating this internally. I like that at least the terminology is standardized here, at least the very minimum, because I was telling my habitat class, one of the main cause of species lost is not only the quantity of habitat, but also the quality via removal and or misuse of ecological drivers or things that mimic ecological drivers. And we don't use the terms consistently across studies, across management agencies. And my thought process is if we have standardized names for species for consistency, at least maybe we should consider the same standardized terminology for the number one thing that we're trying to protect in order to protect our species. So this rule would make it more in line with the standardized terminology, but it may have implications that are beyond my knowledge. And for the students paying attention, the paper that standardizes our terminology is Linnea Hall et al. 1997. Michael Morrison and I think Paul Krausman are the other two authors. It's the Habitat Concept and a Plea for Standardized Terminology, Wildlife Society Bulletin. I think it's something issue 17, but you can look up the specifics. It was we misused habitat and those definitions so much that in 2016 they published another paper. Maybe not. I don't know. I know Michael was on the paper, maybe Paul Krausman. I'm not sure about Linnea Hall. In 2016, and the title was simply Another Plea for Standardized Terminology. And it's just saying, hey, let's be consistent here. And they have pretty good rationale for it. And beyond that, it's one thing to define it, habitat. It's another thing to measure it. And most of the students here, especially our grad students or MS students, are like, I want to study habitat. I'm like, all right, tell me the spatial scales and designs you want to use and how you will collect each one, and it's a nightmare. So it's easily one of the most easily confused topics and misused. So comments, questions on habitat? So an example. So I'm a member of the Lesser Prairie Chicken Range-Wide Plan Science Committee. I've been on it since 2012. I was on various committees and stuff. And in 2012 to 13, I was on one of the committees that, should the species be listed, what's critical habitat? So we were told to designate that critical habitat. And you might think of, scientists, they meet in a room and they have this great gathering of minds and it's, celebration and hey, you're at the top of your field, but in reality, you're stuck in a Denver airport hotel for 2 hours when they're telling you to come up with a number for population needs, and it sucks. We were told to come up with critical habitat, and one of the cons as defined now is we had to use the former occupied range for lesser prairie chickens, which in all reality comes from a white paper from the Forest Service in the 80s where somebody literally grabbed a pencil and just drew a circle around the Southern High Plains, Texas Southern High Plains, and all the way up to Kansas. And that included about 30 or 40 Texas counties that had little to no evidence that there were chickens in those areas. So we had to go through and contact not me, I just made the recommendation and got my donuts and left the meeting. But the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies had to contact all of the counties and say, hey, we might have to designate you as critical habitat, and these are all the subsequent economic impacts, which there is no available scientific literature support that management should occur in those areas, given that we have a really fair understanding of where the species is now and their habitat requirements. So this is in this particular scenario, this change would be really good, but there might be other species there that really, really don't benefit from this. And like with anything, any proposed change, there's going to be winners and losers. So, do you guys have any thoughts on that, or we just want to skip to your articles?
I mean, I'll say just something real quick. I mean, when I saw this come out in the news, I was really, really excited because habitat's a really tricky thing, and it depends on what you work with, right? So I did my PhD on northern bobwhites. Bobwhite habitat, yeah, it's pretty easy to quantify.
Yeah.
It's also pretty flexible, though, and so I always think about some of those pretty generalist species and go, good God, you know, I work on carnivores a lot now. There's a lot of generalist carnivores. If they ever decide that they need to designate habitat, the issue of an animal could live there, but it doesn't right now. That one's really tricky. And in some ways it gets in the way of good conservation because people start to back up and go, whoa, 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 that's a generalist species. If they're read into it at all, they go, it could live here, but there's not one for 100 miles. We're not against keeping up with them where they are, but yeah, I don't know. It really, I think, is going to help us out, depending on how it comes out at the end, deal with some of these sticky widgets and these thorny issues, try to get conservation done. People are not opposed to the general concept most of the time, but it's how does it matter for me? And I'll tell you, in the golden cheek warbler and black-capped vireo world of the early 90s, I grew up in that area, and we owned some ranch land that had those animals on them. And some of those overnight critical habitat designations were tricky. And there were folks that weren't opposed to taking care of the birds. Who cared, right? Okay. But some of the definitions that were handed down and the rules that were coming into play, man, it made it tough for landowners. And I always think about that Leopoldian comment about conservation boils down to the private landowner that protects the public interest. In Texas, man, that's true.
It is very true.
So trying to make the law work, you know, like ESA, we've got landowner options, right? Landowner incentive programs, habitat conservation, but we've got ways to work with landowners with a carrot instead of a stick. And I think this is another one of those steps in the right direction. And for you Aggies that are on the phone, those 1990s era landowner incentive options for things under ESA, Jack Ward Thomas was head of the Forest Service at the time and helped advise on some of those issues. Jack Ward being one of the founding members of the Texas chapter and a big Aggie. So if you don't know anything about him, he's passed away a few years ago. You need to go learn about him and what he did in terms of helping put those things together. But anyways.
So a lot along that comment, if you think back to the 1920s, I think the three most endangered species probably quantifiable in the United States were white-tailed deer, wild turkey, and maybe wood duck. Maybe one is different in there. Think about trying to designate critical habitat for white-tailed deer and wild turkeys. It's like the dumpster out back would be critical habitat for white-tailed deer. We'd all be screwed. I mean, we'd have to give up our, So, that's a really good, something I haven't thought about is some of those general species. Specialist and generalist does not dictate conservation status. It's much more complex than that. And generalists do run the risk of being threatened or endangered in some way. And I agree. I think this is a pretty good step in the right direction of being clear with our constituents about what is and what isn't habitat for the species, and to develop relevant management plans that focus on the right places instead of all the places. So, anything to add, Warren? You're working through emails right now. So he's like, this
keyboard fast.
I didn't know I was getting quizzed.
What are we talking about?
So I feel like a student. I was like, what?
What?
Don't call me.
It's like you click off Facebook when we walk behind you in class. It's like if you bring your laptop to class, I'm already assuming that you're just checking out. So my advice to you guys, and we'll get to this because we're running late in the show, don't bring your laptop to class. So Dr. Tomachek, so you have this article here, and I really like this one. I like the quote here.
So this one's fun, just to kind of touch on it. So those of you that know me, I work a lot in carnivores and damaging species like pigs and all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that we don't talk about a lot in class, and honestly, we probably should more, is damages from migratory birds, which are a huge issue in various realms, right? But In Texas, we deal a lot with damages from black vultures on livestock, hell, on buildings too. They'll pull the caulking right off your windows for whatever reason, the weather stripping off your car doors, you name it. And so Migratory Bird Treaty Act is an interesting one. It's one of our very old conservation laws in this country. It has some real teeth to it. And if you're not familiar with what's considered a quote unquote migratory bird, I want you to go Google the 10.13 list, which is the section of this law that defines a species. There's only a handful of things that aren't considered migratory, right?
Yep.
So forever, MBTA considered that incidental take is one of those things that, you cannot say, oh, I was trying to deal with these birds. You can harass the tar out of them, but you can't hurt them. And even if you say, oh gosh, I was aiming a shotgun near the birds and I got a little close and I killed one by accident, that is not a defense. Saying I did not intend to do it was never a defense. Well, a handful of years ago, MBTA was reinterpreted by the powers that be, and it said, hey, when you did an action, if the goal of that action was not to kill birds, we're an industrial company, we're doing stuff, we're making industrial products. We didn't mean to kill 50,000 birds that were migrating here south for the winter, but we did. But hey, we didn't mean to. We're innocent.
Yep.
It took a lot of the teeth out of that law. And for anybody that deals with damage, like our friends in Wildlife Services, they had to really take a step back and sit and reevaluate dealing with damages from those species and permitting items. Because you can get a permit to deal with damaging species to take a small number, right? But it's not incidental, it's permitted take. We'll make a long story short, it finally made it through the court system and a judge said, no, just because you didn't mean to kill 100,000 migratory birds doesn't mean that you're harmless. You did it. Whether or not you meant to, you're responsible for your actions, and you're going to have to take a step back and think about how are you going to keep from doing that in the future. So it went through the court system, right? And I will tell you, one of my in-laws is an attorney. I have no other relatives that are attorneys, nor have I spent much time around them, right? But one thing I learned from that in-law of mine is that the law is not a static thing. The law is only as good as the lawyers who argue it at the time and the information they have to back up their arguments. And so this is one that reinterpretation deviated from what we've had for MBTA for damn near 100 years. And then when it made it through the court system, the courts reaffirmed what we've always thought in terms of this law has teeth. And in the world of legal issues within the US, there's varying levels of strength of laws. But I encourage you to think about it this way. It's the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. It's a treaty that the US signed with multiple countries a long time ago. And we put our reputation on the line and said, the United States of America will do this. And we're all only ever as good as our word. So the act is the law that enforces us keeping our word on the world stage. So these laws have a whole lot of teeth. The judge said, no, absolutely not. We made this agreement with a number of countries over 100 years ago, and we're going to honor that agreement. We are not going to let this happen. So we kind of came full circle, but it was a lot of scientific input and a lot of hard thinking and hard data that helped this reinterpretation kind of work through that process. So I don't know. For me, it's been really interesting to follow because it's affected how we talk to people about damage issues and we talk about incidental bird take. So I don't know if you guys have thoughts. For me, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so John, I have the article I have it pulled up for our viewers, and there's a section here highlighted. It says, not only is it a sin to kill a mockingbird, but it's also a crime. Caproni wrote, that has been the letter of the law for the past century, referencing when the Migratory Bird Treaty Act was passed. But if the Department of Interior has its way, many mockingbirds and other migratory birds that delight people and support ecosystems throughout the country will be killed without legal consequence. And that was kind of the major finding there. And much like the Provost reference earlier, that's a pretty bold statement, I think.
All right, keep going. I got to let the dogs out. Hold on.
Yeah, there is a laundry list. You said 10.13 of all the migratory species in the United States that we have to protect. And for our readers, our viewers, or not our readers, Dr. Tomachek brought up a really important point. Under the treaty clause of the U.S. Constitution, only the federal government is allowed to enter treaties into other countries. And the Migratory Bird Treaty Act is actually a federal act because it protects not only birds in the United States, but also Mexico and Canada. So this has implications beyond our borders. And, I'm at least thankful here this was going to be a huge impact if it continued. And I'm glad it didn't, because it still provides protection for that list of 10.13 of those species. But there are a few species that are not migratory birds. They're either, and they're state managed as game birds or non-migratory birds, and that includes non-migratory would be like northern bobwhite or skilled quail and some of those ground nested birds, and there's also invasive and exotic species like Eurasian collared doves, ground doves, not ground doves, rock doves, pigeons. Like, ground doves are protected. Don't harm them. Okay. And European starlings, house sparrows, and
That's about it. I mean, there's not very many.
yeah, and that there's really not. And one of the things that really pisses me off is ringneck pheasants. They're not federally protected, but they are state protected under most. And the difference between that,
That's a soapbox for another time.
that I could go for 4 hours on ringneck pheasants.
You and me both, buddy. You and me both, because they have bag limits, they have seasons, but they're exotics.
They are. And they do better in ditches than most of our resident grouse and as well as quail.
So y'all know my major professor for my PhD, Dr. Marcus Peterson, who's now at UT El Paso. Marcus used to refer to them as the commandos of the Galliform world.
They really do kind of drive everything from Texas all the way up to North Dakota.
Yeah, you just drop them out in the ditch and somehow they take off and all the native species go away, but they're fine.
They are evolutionary successful. And they live in a ditch. It's like a redneck from Arkansas. It's like, it doesn't matter, make a home. So I hate pheasants with a passion. Simply because they interfere with most North American grouse conservation. And that's a very sensitive topic. So we're going to move on to Dr. Conway's article. And much like a full professor / department chair, he wants to talk about baseball.
So, because I didn't know we were going to get a habitat lecture from you.
I had to make it somewhat relevant to this. I mean, next time I'll do something less serious, but I thought it was relevant. I like.
No, it was good. No, and the MBTA stuff. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to the news, that was a really, really, really big issue. And we celebrated the 100-year anniversary, like twice, because when it was first signed and then ratified and added other countries to it, and I think, we cover that in a number of classes. What are the differences? Who's responsible? And the Migratory Bird Treaty component really does, it clearly, because of the act, we coordinate with Canada, Mexico, and so it's crucially important. And I think, in that article, reference into that paper that came out, I think it was during the summer, something along the line of like 3 billion birds that have been lost since the 1970s and that kind of stuff. That has become a really important mantle that people have held onto and waved about bird conservation. So the timing was really interesting when this new ruling came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, Blake sent us a homework assignment. I forgot about it until this morning. And so the trade deadline for the Major League Baseball happened the other day, and the San Diego Padres, they went all in. So, and I'm hoping somebody on this call pays attention to baseball. You getting any chatter in any chat comments?
Nothing yet, but I know Rachel will speak up. My friend, she's an avid baseball fan, and she's
all right.
Baseball. Don't you want to talk about Cowboys football?
No,
I like to talk about things that are fun, relevant, and also have winning traditions.
So just as a little deviation from the wildlife type stuff, thinking in terms of, because this has impacted, COVID is kind of where I'm going with this. This has impacted everything. If you're watching, I guess John checked out.
He's
Yes.
like deuces. he's like we killed him. He's dead.
They call it Grishaming out. I
Yeah,
believe.
just leave. Hey, I
No,
got
you would have left
medication.
and not come back.
I gotta let the dog out. I'll be back.
Yeah, go for it.
And so, thinking in terms of COVID and everything that we're all doing, right? And what you're doing in your personal life, your professional life, all the sports teams are trying to move forward in a weird way. And so kind of thinking about it in like a risk reward framework, right? So like optimal foraging theory in wildlife stuff, or, the risk reward of taking a particular class if you're a student, getting an experience going out in the field, the risks of perhaps getting injured, the reward of actually doing it. The Padres haven't been in the World Series since 1998, never won the World Series, and they went all in at the trade deadline because it's a shortened season. They were one of the few teams, I think, that hasn't had any COVID positive cases. And if you've watched baseball at all, they have people cut out in the stands. They had a highlight last week. Somebody, I forget what game it was, but they had teddy bears in the stand, and a teddy bear took a ball right between the eyes. So, I mean, it's just, baseball is just weird, right? Everything's weird.
Yeah.
The Padres haven't been good in 20-something years. Now all of a sudden they're like the best team in baseball. And so they're all in. So it's kind of thinking about, decision-making processes that you have in your own life, but also in the current COVID climate.
So John, he's about to get philosophical about baseball. So
I noticed. I had to
the deeper.
philosophize it now.
He's all pissed off now. Like deep thoughts with Warren, and a waterfall trickles.
You know what really grinds my gears?
Look at my fucking soapbox. Here we are.
Hey, I knew he was from the East Coast. He said, you know what really grinds my gears? He's falling right into it.
So that's an awesome Family Guy reference too, by the way.
Yeah, that was great.
So,
Anyway.
by all means, Dr. Conway, tell us the philosophical link between risk, reward, and baseball. Because in all reality, baseball is actually the most mature sport because it requires thought, planning, strategy, and statistics, and everything else is just dudes running into each other.
Well, yeah. Well, and kind of like if you do sort of want to wax poetic about it, so like even in your own career, we work as a team. I mean, John's in College Station. I'm at the house. You're at the house. All our students are out in the field, and we rely on a really weird network of people that do things.
Yep.
In the field, in class, you've got to do your own work. We've got to judge it. In a baseball reference, you've got 9 people in the field. They communicate some, but in the moment, they've got to act and they've got to sort of perform. So, when you're called on to perform, and it's oftentimes, hopefully it's a reaction where you don't think too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that if you kind of read any sort of biographies about really super, super uber successful athletes, like Michael Jordan or Larry Bird or Derek Jeter or some of these really high, really elite athletes, these people, when they go through life in a very different manner, obviously, but they are often the most talented, just pure given talent. But they're also the ones that have the most, the highest level of work ethic, and they visualize success. And so if you've ever, a lot of you may not be NBA fans, but Kobe Bryant got killed in a helicopter crash, back in January. And there's a story about him. He was incredibly talented. Was trying to fill his shoes in Michael Jordan when Michael Jordan left the NBA. And there's a story, you can find it online, about a player that would travel to LA. They're going to play the Lakers, and he decided to go get some extra work in, go shoot around, do whatever. And he got there at like 10 o'clock in the morning. He figured he'd be there an hour and a half or something like that. And Kobe was already in the gym, already practicing. And so the traveling visitor player, he worked out, did a couple hours worth of work, and Kobe was still there and continued to be there. And fast forward, a couple months down the road, I guess, Kobe scored like 45 points on him that night or something along that line. And they talked down the road, and he asked, yeah, hey, what, do you do that every night? Do you work that hard every day? He's like, yeah, but I knew I had you beat the moment you walked off the court during practice because you were watching me, and I was in your head already. And here's a guy that could probably just wake up and go, score 40 points without even working hard. And so it's kind of like thinking about your own life and your profession. There's ways of working hard. There's ways of working efficiently, taking advantage of those opportunities, visualizing success. What is success to you personally, professionally in this field? And so I think, there's some lessons to be learned about if you follow sports, about sports strategies. And if you read some of the things that some of these really elite players did, there's some things that you can probably sort of internalize and use on your own. Interestingly, like Larry Bird and Michael Jordan both, coached for a while. And they were terrible coaches because they could not articulate what they could do. They just couldn't understand other people couldn't do it. So sometimes the best teachers and the people on the call right now, we're not Michael Jordan.
No.
I'm not, I'm not Mike Trout. I couldn't hit a curveball, right? So people that have, less God-given talent might need to, work harder and kind of form and find your own path and create your own opportunities. And I think we see it a lot in our students. And I think for me, I like sports references. So this is less about a wildlife topic, but I think might kind of blend into some of the other things that Blake wanted to talk about. So just, whether you like baseball or not, I think there's some really interesting life lessons to be learned by some, not all athletes, but some athletes that have really good sort of work ethic and work despite their talent. They work really, really hard. And I think that's probably a really good lesson for a lot of us.
And I agree. Nothing pisses me off more in class to see some guy wearing a shirt that says talented but lazy. You see that? I say those a lot, and I'm like,
well, there's a great quote from a movie, and so I like mafia movies. So Bronx Tale.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen that one?
Yep.
All right, John.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up. Tell the story.
So, but there's a line in there. There's nothing worse than wasted talent.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you may be the most talented, but those that have a lot of talent, hopefully they acquire some leadership positions and leadership skills and can transfer that to help others out. And I think, in the current sort of weird COVID climate that we're in, some of that stuff is probably more important perhaps than we used to think. And it does get back, to the mental health element where people really do need to communicate with one another. It's really easy to vaporize right now. And I mentioned that last night on the student chapter meeting as well. And it's something I think the collective, we need to be on the lookout for. But as students that are on the call and other people, Lord knows who's hearing this, I think it's probably an important lesson to really check in on people.
Yeah. I agree. And this whole it's not necessarily a generational thing, but the concept that talent can outdo work ethic is just total bullshit. Really good, successful people have both. And I found that, at least in my classrooms of students, the one that works hard regardless of natural talent are usually the ones that succeed because they understand, how to overcome obstacles of someone compared to someone who is talented yet lazy, who doesn't overcome those. So what this means for most of us in this world is I am not physically fit to play Major League Baseball or anything else. I'm like 5'2". But going back to bragging on ourselves and we we are kind of at the top of our field. We're doing a pretty good job here. And I know these two well enough to be like, we're not all brilliant, but we work really hard. We have brilliant moments. And most of those brilliant moments be like, did he just say that? You're like, yeah, I did. I don't know how it happened, but I did. It's like it's just like a snap, and it's like
Everybody gets one.
it's like in what is it in Old School when Will Ferrell blacks out during the Jeopardy style, and he talks about the 1984 or whatever stock market reform, and he snaps back, and he's like, I don't know what I said. I think us here, yeah, we do have some talent, and we have experience. But more than anything, we have the drive and the work ethic to be here. And for our students, hey, yeah, you may not be the smartest kid in the room, but we don't give a shit. Usually that person annoys us more than anything because they don't stop talking. I remember one kid, and this is kind of a segue into what we're talking about, what not to do. This one kid would not shut up in my pop die class, and I don't know his name anymore because he's irrelevant in my life. But I remember the only thing I really said was, all right, shut up, Hermione. Let somebody else answer the question, because he was dominating the conversation. And, in all reality, I just wanted to let him come there and teach the class so I could go drink a beer, take the morning off. But he would have sunk if I'd have let him do that because he was just trying to be a smart ass about stuff. So we're going to use – go ahead, John.
No, sorry, I didn't interrupt. Your point is, I mean, you get these people, right? And they want to make it obvious that they know a bunch. And it's like, that doesn't help anybody. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping anybody else. But to your point of working hard, it's like, for those of y'all that know me very well, I came to wildlife a little bit later. And I worked my ass off for years to try to get caught up on things that I hadn't been in earlier and caught up on people that had a lot more natural talent than I did. And I don't know how to tell you. It's just it's a habit you get into. You get up early and you work hard and you stay late. And there's a lot of people that are way smarter than I am. I got people work for me who are way smarter than I am, and it makes me smile every day. But it's that humility. You gotta have it.
You gotta have it. You gotta be good at what you do to succeed. You gotta work hard for it, but you gotta recognize you didn't get there on yourself, and you need to help others out who are pursuing that. And for our viewers, I just put the Swanson Pyramid of Greatness on the stream, so you can. It's not necessarily sports. There's a really good. Who was the basketball coach that had the Pyramid of Greatness?
John Wooden.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one.
If you remember, I put that in my seminar. That didn't go over well with one person.
I know, and the reason I kind of let you go about this baseball reference is because I know, one, I agree with you. We kind of undervalue athletes in a lot of ways, that we undervalue their talent and their work ethic. You're like, oh, they're making millions of dollars. But yeah, you know what? You can't hit a 98 mile per hour, curveball thrown by Greg Maddux. They're going to, it's going to be a millimeter on the edge. And
do you know how many things were wrong with that one statement?
No, I'm just making shit up as I go. Probably a lot. So he didn't have a good fastball. His fastball like 82, right? Or his
right? Yeah,
like
he didn't throw it hard. You don't throw a curveball that fast. Come on, man.
So we don't have that talent, and they do. I mean, when I was playing high school baseball, there was one kid who played for Walnut Ridge, Arkansas, who could just blast it like 475 feet. No matter who was pitching, just destroy it. Never made it out of single A. Like his high school batting average was like 999.999. Never made it out of it. Like his single A batting average was like .015. So you think about these people who are really good at that. They are on the far right of the bell curve, about 4 distributions out. And then beyond that, their everyday work life is in the view. So yeah, they deserve to be paid that much. Can you imagine if people were, like watching us on like Monday Night Football, like tonight and like tomorrow, we had to wake up to like, man, Grisham really screwed up that baseball reference, but in serious ways, like, man, he really sucked teaching that class. Like, yeah, I know.
Well, I think one of the things, I mean, a really important lesson, and I think it's for everybody, a lot of people and a lot of students might not have experienced it yet. But like, there was a guy that I played against in high school as well. Same thing, super talented, good drafted, and he never made it because he never knew how to outmaneuver a wall or an obstacle. He wasn't used to failure. And, I think, and baseball is actually a really good example. You know, a Hall of Famer is somebody who does, hits, safely hits 30% of the time.
Yeah, and I say that Popeye as a metric
Yeah.
for getting everything right on test. A Hall of Famer in baseball is someone who gets a hit 1/3 of the time. That's a 33.
So, and I think, for students, learning how to deal with adversity and learning how to deal with failure, and outmaneuvering it and overcoming it, those are important lessons. And if you haven't experienced that yet, don't worry, it's coming. But be prepared to kind of have the mental preparation to kind of think about how you're going to deal with it.
Exactly. So what I'm going to do here, Warren, is I'm going to use this as a segue. I was going to talk about how Randy Johnson smoked that pigeon with a fastball going to 104. And that's okay because pigeons are not protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So I could actually link baseball back to wildlife, but we've already established that there's a good link here. So what we're going to talk about now is a segue of what Dr. Conway said about what it takes to be a really good student. And I'm going to start out with just a few things, and John's going to tell us a story, and then I'll let Warren pick up where he left off. But at Texas Tech and NRM, we're known for a lot of things. I know the Aggies have a proud tradition within their program, and they produce some of the best range wildlife and fisheries biologists we've ever seen. And Tech is right up there with us, with you guys, and we have a storied tradition. And our tradition is really versed in quality applied field biologists. And that started in the 70s with the accreditation of the range program, and now wildlife and our range program. We're trying to rebuild those kind of aspects. But at least right now, in my opinion, our wildlife students at the very minimum are really well prepared for the next stage. And that wasn't always the case. And that's for various mechanisms, nothing that should be discussed here, but it is what it is. And, when I was hired in 2013, I wanted to help the society build up so we could kind of be where we're at now. I'm really proud of where we're at. And then Warren was hired in 2014. We have a very similar teaching philosophy within the department and TWS. And we decided to teach this field techniques class in Junction, which is, in my opinion, is the best career move I've ever made. It is if I had to highlight one single thing that I think not only facilitated success, but also was the thing I enjoyed the most, it was that course. And when Warren and I started teaching it the first semester, not the first semester, it was Maymester, right? In 2016 was the first one. It was offered during this Maymester period in Junction where there's lots of other classes there. And our teaching philosophy is if you're in the class, you're going to work. We kind of are captains of the fuck along gang, but not really. If you earn our trust, maybe. But that was the conception among the students, that they were there to party. And various things happened, including hate crimes. And Warren and I, John, I'm dead serious. I don't know if you heard this story, but yeah, hate crimes. That's a lot of paperwork, by the way.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, oh man, it got bad. I literally left for one weekend and we came back and it was chaos. Wow. And the next Monday, I remember the Sunday, Warren and I were doing paperwork to clear up everything. But the next Monday, I think we had in my opinion, a single conversation with 30 kids that really was the catalyst for where we're at now. And it was a serious heart to heart. And I think a lot of kids didn't expect that coming from two professors in their field. Normally what they encounter in other disciplines is you pass class, go on, whatever. And we kind of let them know, very strongly worded conversation, that we care about you. We want to see you succeed. But there's a few caveats to that. You have to do the work. We're going to give you the opportunities. And more importantly, you're going to treat each other like human beings, or we're going to make sure you're never in our field again. And we're already here and we can establish that, and you can do nothing about it. So we told them that afternoon, we're like, all right, you're going to get your act together, leave for a little while. We're tired of seeing your stupid faces because we were livid. And we're like, when you come back, we're going to reevaluate what you want to do, if this is what you want to do. And I think we had mixed results at first. There was still a cohort that was kind of like, I'm just here to be here. And then I think a large proportion of the students really understood what we were trying to say. And to be fair to those kids, they were kind of looking for someone to reach out to, and we were looking to reach out to them. And over time, they got their act together. That first class was kind of a nightmare, but every class since then, they kind of learned the lessons. But one of the things I remember most about that class was this young student named Connor. And we were trying to build camaraderie and after all this stuff. And Connor's a really good student. Is he still a grad student with Dr. Cox, or is he finished? So Connor's a good kid. And we were putting up mist nets and things like that. And we were trying to just get them to be people for a few minutes. We're like, throw insults out there, make fun of each other. And of course, them being 18 to 25, most of them were mom and sister jokes. But Connor was just laying down some of the best lines known to man. And he made two comments that Warren and I don't think we'll ever forget. And the first one was, I don't know if your mist net setting technique is good or not, but I know it's not a steak because it's not rare, but it's certainly not well done. It's something like that.
It's something along the lines. Yeah, I hope your mistnating skills are not as good as are better than your steak cooking skills.
Yeah, this isn't rare, but it's certainly not well done.
They're not rare, they're not medium, and it's certainly not well done.
So that was one, and that one's kind of hard to incorporate in day-to-day use. It has to be executed really well.
Yeah.
Connor delivered it perfectly. I mean, everyone was just silenced because they knew that they couldn't do that. But one of the better ones that he came up with that we have used, he said, your methodologies are subpar and inadequate. And that, we say it all the time because it just gets the point across. That It doesn't suck. But I think subpar and inadequate really gets the point across. Be like, hey, that email, it's okay, but mostly it's subpar and inadequate. You can do better. So we use that a lot. And then, so that kind of memed itself through the kids, and we heard them saying it from time to time. And that was the first year. So that first year was kind of rough, and we were working through it, and we were debating, like, do we want to do this again? And the answer was, yeah, we want to give it another try based on this. Because what we saw after all that, when we came back in September, those kids were friends. Hell, even Jenny and Hayden got married from that first class. So they knew at that point, yeah, we lived up to what we told them. We kept our promise, and they did the same thing. And now some of those kids are professionals. Like that was a really successful cohort. Like Sarah Whitston, now Sarah Hollers was, in that class, and a few others. So the second year, as we earned the trust of the students, and more importantly, they earned our trust, we started to lighten up a little bit. But our whole goal of that class is kind of be douchey and just ourselves, to give them a common enemy at first. Like, hate us. We don't care. We're getting paid anyway, and you don't know each other, and that's okay. But you have a common enemy, and it's these two guys. And somewhere along the line, Dr. Conway, you said, well, that's a you problem. And I think you used it in other classes before, and maybe at SFA when you were there.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I don't know how it took off, but we use it all the time. All the time. And it is I think it's at least the wildlife component of NRM, it's ours. That is our saying. And I don't know if we can trademark it, because I don't want to trademark it. I want others to use it. But I really, when I think of NRM, I think of producing really good field biologists and good people and family members, but I also think of that saying. So I'm proud of it. And we use it all the time. So the name of this whole show tonight is That Sounds Like a You Problem. And it's information and advice for our current cohort coming in, and maybe existing cohort. Because as professors in various ways, department chair, associate, assistant, and extension, we do a lot of stuff day to day. And we can't handle all of you problems. We got enough of our own problems. So I guess the best way to go with this is just provide relevant examples of you problems and what you should and shouldn't do. And I think that one of the single best stories I've heard is Dr. Tomachek's story. So I'm going to take a quick break, and John, why don't you take over and tell us about this infamous email that I still love to this day?
Yeah, so I appreciate that, Dr. Grisham. I always enjoy getting to tell the story, and I think the context of how the story came about is just as important as what was delivered. So for those of you that might be master's students or you might be considering going to graduate school, I was in my first semester of my master's. It was fall of whatever the damn year that was, I can't remember. And I was eager to impress my faculty advisor, who was the professor for the course I was TAing, and I was really unsure of myself, and I'd just been an undergrad. But I also was overworked, and I remember that, and I was learning what were me problems and what were you problems, although I hadn't had the wonderful term yet. Thank you very much to the Texas Tech crew. I got to say, my Aggies are getting to know that term, and ever since I was exposed to it coming to teach for the Texas Tech field course, it was, as they say, an epiphantic moment. I had an epiphany about this term, and everything in my life finally made sense, and I've been using it. So thank you. But so I was in my first semester of my master's, and I was learning about me problems and you problems. Because, like a lot of folks that are in this field, I like to help people. I want to help wherever I can. I'll hop in, take care of you. But man, there's only so many hours in the day. And as a new master's student, as if Micah Rainey's still on, I don't know if she is or not, as Micah is learning right now with me, I will bury you in work and you will bury yourself in even more work. And there's just not enough time for it all. So one night, about midnight, I was still sitting at my computer working, because that's what you do. And I'm trying to get my stuff done. And my email is open on the screen as well, for whatever stupid reason, right? And my email dinged. What the hell? And it wasn't quite in the days of AOL where it told me that I had mail, but we weren't much past that either. And that may not make sense to any of you. Go Google it, YouTube it, it'll make sense. This was in the era when we still got floppy disks in the mail to install AOL. So I turn and I look at my email, and there's a new message that was sent from one of the students. I recognized the name for the class I was TAing and the student, and the title of the email read in all caps, which in every time in modern era means you're yelling at somebody. In all caps, it reads, "My very important problem and why you need to solve it." And my window was big enough, I can begin in frame. My window was big enough, I could see all of those words. And it was late at night, and I was exhausted, and I was a poor grad student, and it said, "My very important problem and why you need to solve it." Bullshit. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, to this day, I really wonder what that email said, because I never read it. I just deleted that thing. I used the delete key on my keyboard and went bloop, and it was gone. And to this day, I have wondered what that email said, because that was 100% a them problem and not a me problem, whatever it was. And although I like to help students, it touched a raw nerve at that moment in my 22-year-old body, and I was done, and that sucker was deleted. And that is absolutely the worst way to communicate with anybody that you need something from. For the A&M kids on the call, if you're still on the call, if you're in my Techniques of Wildlife Management course this semester, I opened up with a slide on the entry day slides, and here's the syllabus and everything else, the conundrum of the you problem. You have a problem. And unfortunately for you, I'm in a position of power, and you need my help dealing with a you problem. How on earth do you ask me to help you with a you problem? Well, I can tell you a lot of ways to do it, but it sure as hell isn't that. Yeah. Don't ever send an email that even looks like that, because guys, folks may not delete it, but I guarantee you nothing you say inside of there is going to convince me to help you out.
Yeah, I got one yesterday, for example, that was leading to very good. A kid was requesting help, and he was very polite and said, "I appreciate you helping." And then his final statement in the last email that I paid attention to was, "This is an emergency and I really need it taken care of today." Delete. That was the end of it. It's like, it's not an emergency for me. And you said everything right up until that one thing. And it was like 4:15 in the afternoon, and he wanted to switch classes, and he needed to get into this one seat, which required special permission from both Miss K and the other people. Like, there's no way in hell. And then, just because you want to switch because you don't like one professor, then that's a you problem. You should have come up with this numerous days ago. So, email communication is really important right now in the days of COVID. And Dr. Conway was on this email string I was having with the freshmen in August. And mistake number one is to assume that we're going to solve a you problem. We were more than happy to, but in general, you need to ask for our help. And I was trying to help this one kid. Out of 64 NRM freshmen who came in this cohort, he was the only one who magically didn't get signed up for classes for whatever reason. And he was sniffing around the department looking for people to do the work for him. I still don't know to this day if he got signed up for classes because I stopped replying to the emails.
Well, I think, kind of to jump in on that, I think, something to be thinking about from a student perspective is, if you're asking for help,
Mhm.
but you're really asking for a favor.
Yep.
And so if it's something that you're asking somebody to do a favor for you, think about that framework. And if you're demanding somebody to do you a favor, it comes off really poorly.
It is.
And so, just think about it in your own personal life. If you have a friend's like, hey, I need you to do this for me.
No.
I would be shocked if your immediate response is like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, it's just, it's a little bit of tact. It's a little bit of framework. It's a little bit of thinking, what are you really asking for here? Like even now, I'm getting emails. Well, isn't there any way we can meet face to face? No, not right now.
No.
And the reality is, doing scheduling and stuff like that, frankly, no, there's no need to meet face to face. Have some patience, have some humility, and be really thoughtful about what it is that you're asking. Because we do. We're overwhelmed. We all are with electronic transmissions, right? Whether it's email or Instabook and Snapgram or whatever the hell
All of
you
this
call
stuff is just
it.
just communicating online, and in addition to all of our other daily activities, is overwhelming. So, students, if this conversation is overwhelming you and putting you a fear of communicating with your faculty professors, don't be afraid, okay? There's a simple solution here. If you're emailing for a favor and or help, there's a really good way to do this. The first is Dear Dr. Whoever, okay? And if you don't know if they're a doctor or not in the university system, put a doctor in front of their name, okay? Not Mr., not Miss, they're a doctor, okay? And then they'll correct you if you're wrong, and no one gets hurt when you call them doctor, okay? Like Dr. Rainey. She probably got nervous when you're saying that, but she probably got a little proud too. But, just make the assumption that everyone has a doctorate, okay? Dear Dr. someone, comma. The information in your email should be in full sentences, complete sentences with really good grammar and the best of your ability, punctuation and spelling.
Mhm.
And if you really want to succeed at getting help, there is no such thing as superfluous please and thank yous. Use those as much as you possibly can. Okay? And then when you're finished with your request, thank you or salutations, your name signed.
Yeah.
That is
Can I jump in on one thing, Dr. Grisham?
Please do.
This model right here, it works everywhere all the time in university settings. When you graduate, it always works. And I will tell you, I get a bunch of emails from freshmen that are looking for help and looking for a place in wildlife profession. I want to help them. I got an email 2 days ago from a brand new freshman at Texas A&M University in wildlife who's trying to figure out what the hell to do in the COVID world and how to get some experience. And it was the most perfect, professionally constructed email I've seen in ages. And she was asking if I had any opportunities that she might volunteer on to just do anything. And we get a lot of those requests. And I will tell you, after that email, I wrote her back immediately with a very nice email, said, Dear Miss So-and-so, thank you very much for your kind message. This is one of the most professional emails I've had in ages. what's your availability this week? I'd love to visit with you. And I'm already thinking in my head, this is somebody I want to grab and get them to work for me because, wow, there's not a lot of these that come by.
Exactly.
You've got some
Go
good,
ahead.
yeah.
No,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to add to that. Oh, I was copying Warren on an email today from a freshman at
Yeah.
similar situation. She emailed me a few days ago. I was a little bit behind, and I emailed her back today with a follow up, apologizing for the delay. So it was her initial email was really clear. I'd like to help out. I really don't know how. Can you help me out with this? I'd like to get involved with research, and I would be more than willing to provide any information about me that might be useful. And that indicated to me that she was willing to write a longer email. So I sent her an email and I said, "Hey, thanks for the email. Appreciate it. What do you do?" The next email, I think there was one spelling error, but it was all minor. I do that all the time. Professional, really good information, included information about her past. And the first thing I did was I copied all the people who work with mammals at Tech and even outside, because I think along the same line, she's going to be a very successful student and scientist in the future. And then we got a reply from Dr. Bradley, and she emailed it took me like 30 minutes to have this conversation, and I'm glad that you had this similar experience.
Well, and I mean, I had one last night too from a student, one of my classes. I mean, he did the same thing.
Yeah.
Really, very, very well thought out, well done. And I guess, for the students that are on, email is now, it is the professional way of communicating with people. It's not text messages. At some point we may get to know you well enough where, you've got our cell phones and some of those can be really fun and entertaining. But at first, you really need to be thoughtful about that. And it's less of an issue now than it used to be. But I used to really kind of get on students where to make sure that when you are representing yourself in a professional way is to use your university email. Everybody's going to get secondary or 2 or 3 or 4 different email accounts. Use your Texas Tech one. If you want to use, your Gmail one for your Amazon buying and eBay or whatever, go ahead. But the reason I say that is, there's still a hangover, I think, from a lot of kids coming out of high school to college, where you get an email and say, "Hi, I'm so and so." It pops up. If you're in Texas Tech, your name pops up. We know who you are. But I think that sort of stems from high school days where often kids and students had a more cryptic email address, for personal security reasons as an underage person. And that's fine. But also be thoughtful about, what your email handle was when you're 15 or 16 versus what you want it to be when you're 20.
Yep.
That does matter. And there was a poor student when I was at Stephen F. Austin, the way that they would do student email addresses is all at sfasu.edu, but they would kind of blend the first and last name and his name. It ended up being Death Ray because that was like a blending of his name, right? I had a colleague. His was Dunger, which I always thought really funny because his last name was Unger, his first name was Dan, and so it was Dunger. Which so be thoughtful about that, and because I don't know, maybe I pay attention to these things more than I should.
I pay really close attention to these things.
Yeah.
I can get a lot of information about how an email is worded. And I know you shouldn't, it's kind of dangerous to interpret tone in like text message and emails. When it comes to students, you are guilty until proven innocent. Because like we said, we have a lot of stuff to do. And that is like the accept, reject, major revision button that goes through my head to help me triage if I need to answer that email now, later, or not at all. And if I get one that's like a text message, like, "Yo, bro, I need this," with, uncapitalized I's and things like that, that's a rejection. Because I got more important things to do, and there's students who need my time and attention, like the young lady who emailed me today, who took the time to really provide a thoughtful email. And John, it's great that you have that too. And
Mhm.
you know what, for the freshman class coming in, we can help provide examples because we all want you to be that. And um, so email communication is really important now. So
Yeah.
uh,
The one thing I want to add before I forget this thought,
Please.
because I'm crazy and I will, when we email you, we do the same things. And if you need assistance on how to construct a good email, this is what I tell my Wildlife Society kids all the time. Just grab one of my emails. I'm going to show you what I want you to do. It's as simple as that.
Yep. So we have a question in the audience, and it's a really good question. So let me read through it. I'm from Arkansas. Give me a second. This might take a minute. For students who lose the email addresses, if they take a few years off to teach or from tech, so if they lose their TTU or A&M
Yeah.
email,
Yeah.
I use my Outlook email for all my professional emails. Would you recommend students to get a second email that has a professional email handle? In those situations, my argument is, yeah, if you lose like a Texas A&M affiliated email, it's okay to send an email from Gmail, but make it like your first name and last name or a combination so we know who the person is. I'm not going to answer from bigbuck136@yahoo.com because in all reality, it's not professional. But two, like with Dr. Tomacek, he does a lot of extension work, and that might be someone, reaching out for positive or negative reasons. And in all reality, he probably needs to vet that. But if it's like from, Micah.Rainey at Texas A&M, I mean, he knows to ignore it because she's his grad student. So
Exactly.
we have that kind of information. So it's just general courtesy, and you can't go wrong if you have dear Dr. So-and-so, please and thank you, sincerely, or thank you, Sarah Smith, who just said this is super helpful, and I'm glad we're helping out, Sarah. So keep that in mind. And do I answer those emails that annoy me? It depends on how annoyed I am. In general, I try, but I triage based on professionalism in the email. If it's really super professional, like the young lady who emailed me today, we worked through that entire email string, and she had 4 contacts within 30 minutes.
Well, and to kind of jump in on that too,
Yeah,
Blake.
please.
So, so the short answer is often yes.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
do respond, and we respond. What I try to do anyhow is respond in a manner that John just mentioned, is like, dear so-and-so, thank you for the email. And oftentimes students will pick up that hint. Sometimes they don't. And, there was an instance this summer where I had to loop in the associate dean. I think, Blake, you're on that email.
I think I am too. I remember this.
And I finally, and it had gone back and forth, and there were some things. I mean, it was orientation, it was all these different things going on. And I think I ended up, because the student was getting frustrated, but it wasn't because of anything that we were or were not doing. We weren't doing it quick enough. And that gets frustrating from my perspective now, but
that's almost, if not more, frustrating than a poorly written email.
Yeah. And so what I ended up doing is I said, look, you've got to have some patience. And I also urge you to learn how to write a professional email. You're dealing with associate deans, and those are people that deal with a lot of student behavior issues and that kind of stuff. And that student, to their credit, wrote back an apology, and from that point forward was much more respectful. So sometimes, and I know Blake's kind of, used a little bit heavier hammer on that, where you send them a link on how to write a properly constructed email.
Oh yeah, I lay out the steps in a clearly worded email.
Yeah.
So
and it worked. It works.
It is, and I don't apologize for doing that, because what I try to do is give every student the benefit of the doubt until I can just recognize that they aren't getting it, and then comes out the 10-pound sledge. All right, and I just have to do it. It's my personality. Should I do it? Maybe not. It does put some students off, but whatever. It's my style. Is it appropriate? I think it is. Some people may not. Some people may have a softer hand. But that's my reputation, and I stand by it. That's my own personal ethics there. So we actually have a really good question here, and I think this needs to be addressed as well. And this question is, What are your thoughts about sending multiple emails given some professors don't answer them at all? And that is to acknowledge that student, some do not. And
Yeah.
I think they need a clear pathway of what to actually do in that situation because there's various degrees of interaction. We three here obviously have a standard of expectations of ourselves with our students, and we try to answer those emails and get back to them to the best within the time frame that's suitable. And I tell my students 24 to 48 hours. If you don't hear from me, email me back. I won't get mad, especially if it's a nicely worded email. It might be different for you guys.
Yeah, let me jump in on that one.
Yeah, and you, Warren, you have the most experience with this. Why don't you chime in on and help out?
Yeah, so and that's a really, really, really good question. I guess a couple things I would recommend students to do is if you send the initial email and you don't get a response, and if there is some timeliness involved, yeah, wait a couple days.
Yep.
And what I would do is don't start a new email string.
Mm-hmm.
Take that sent message and kind of recraft a new email. It's like, hey, dear Dr. So-and-so, I'm following up to see if you received my email or not. And the email below, for whatever reason, X, Y, and Z, I'm asking about this, or I need some assistance with that or whatever. At some point, if you have a faculty member, and this happens, I hear this from students a lot. There are some people that are really bad about responding to students. If you don't hear anything back, I would say probably after 2 email tries, that's when you need to bring it to me if you're a tech student, or to I'm blanking on your new chair's name, John, your department chair.
So we have an interim right now. His name is Dr. Lamb.
Lamb. Okay. Yeah. So I would maybe not it's certainly if you don't respond or you don't get a response after 3 attempts, that needs to get elevated, particularly if it's something important.
Yeah. If it's you can't get registered for a class, figure it out, or talk to the dean's office or somebody. There's another resource available. If there's a serious emergency or something that needs to be addressed, send it up the chain. And if you're in doubt about that, I think that's a question worthy of the department. You're like, I'm not sure if this is an emergency or not, but here's an email. Here's the information.
Yeah, and I think there are some faculty that I know that's a problem. They don't respond well, if ever. Sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of that, and oftentimes if I get students from emails that are dealing with faculty member X, I'm like, okay, yeah. And so I know at that point we just need to deal with it, fix the problem, and move on. Sometimes it surprises me, but sometimes, a lot of times it doesn't. So, but at a point it does need to get elevated if it is a true issue. And sometimes there's been miscommunications, but one thing I have noticed though is if students haven't heard back from a faculty member, often they'll start a new email string, and sometimes that's not helpful because then it might not go back. And honestly, full disclosure, there's been a couple of my advisees during the spring and even during the summer. They reached out. We interacted a little bit, and then I just get sidetracked.
Same. Sometimes we do miss emails, and it's not on purpose.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. They're good kids, they're good students. I'm just like, oh God, yeah, I'm sorry. I totally forgot that we were dealing with something. And so yeah, there's a fine line between being annoying and being persistent. And that's just, I don't know, you've got to figure out that own barometer in your own head.
Yeah. And I agree. And one other thing about replying to the initial email string is you have date and timestamps.
Yeah.
Associated with that. As students, just as a FYI, when you bring up a claim against a faculty member, something about not responding to an email, those types of things, they usually ask for evidence, and that's pretty good evidence. For more serious matters, other avenues exist for taking care of those, but the more information you can provide up the chain to help, someone like Dr. Conway make an informed decision, the better. One email to them being like, hey, that person didn't respond to me. And he's just like, Warren, didn't you say you get like you answer 120 emails a day? You answer.
Yeah, in the neighborhood.
So keep that in mind. And all because in all reality, and I teach my grad students this the hard way. I keep all my emails in separate folders and/or evidence chain. And I didn't have a serious situation with one of my grad students a few weeks ago, but there was some back and forth about who was responsible for certain things. I'm like, listen, I got everything via email, and here's the email chain, and it worked itself out. It wasn't a serious issue, but I provided evidence that here's everything I told you. Here's the date and timestamp. Um, and that person knew maybe he was wrong, and we improvised, adapt, and overcome, and we're in a good position now. But we keep that information, especially when it comes to things like advising in emails. I keep all of my documentation for the university. So we got one more question. I think this is a good one too. It may not be as relevant as some of the other ones because this is advice towards freshmen and students. But there was a question about all of this advice that we're recommending. Would we provide the same advice if a student was emailing out for graduate positions, like trying to talk to professors about their potential positions in their labs? So
It's even more important.
it's more important that you're professional. When I was graduating Arkansas State, I think the time from when I started emailing professors until I was accepted into a position or received an offer was about 2 months. And in that time, I got lucky, to be honest. I think I sent out like something like 45 emails, both for solicited and unsolicited, for positions. And actually, I got numerous replies, and they were all really nice. And I got a few no's, which is okay. And they were all professional. And I got a few no replies, which is a no, by the way. But I got a really nice email from Rick Kaminsky at Mississippi State. He's now at Clemson, correct?
Yep.
And old Rick said, "Hey, Blake, I don't know you, but if I had a position, I'd give it to you." He said, "Thanks for the email. It was really well worded, and it was clear that you're passionate about a few of these things. Thank you for your time." He said, "I'll be on the lookout for you." And that meant a lot. And then like a week later, I got an offer. But in that email, I had "Dear Dr." whoever I was emailing. It wasn't "to whom it may concern." It was "Dear Dr. Kaminsky." Um, um, and it was, don't start your emails with "my name is Blake Grisham" or your name, because we can read the names. Be like, I'm a student at Texas Tech, and I'm interested in your research program for the following reasons. And a general recommendation there is not because it's cool or interesting. We know that. That's why we do it. We wouldn't do it if it wasn't cool and uninteresting. Find something specific to talk about. Like if you're emailing Dr. Tomachek, be like, "I really like coyotes because they are omnivorous and prolific, and they can eat everything, and there's studies that show that they actually follow hunters around for the scraps." That's much more likely to get a response that, "Hey, coyotes are cool." Yeah, we know they're cool. But be specific about that type of information for the person that you're emailing. And we have differences of opinion about to include a resume or a cover letter, but my general recommendation is have a short resume there. Maybe not your 30-page CV, but it has some information about yourself, why you're interested in the position, some contact information, and hey, thanks for your time and energy reading this. I know you have a lot to do. Sincerely, so and so. That's all it needs, and you're likely, a response, no response, or a reply with a no, and that's about the best that you can possibly do. And what I physically do is when I have unsolicited emails like that, if they're professional like that, I'll email them back and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna take a look. I don't have any positions now. Funding's crap. Or I'll do in the future. I'm going to keep your name on file." In all seriousness, when I have something on file, a name and a resume on file in a position, I pull those up first and actually look through them to see if those people are qualified, given that they actually reached out to me. So that's my recommendation. You guys might have something different, but by all means, go for it.
I'll agree with you on that, Blake. I mean, basically the same thing. And if I get an unsolicited email, I still say the same thing. Folks say, "Oh, I'd really like a position in your group." And I have this thing, I will not bring a student on if I can't fund them, even if you're a stellar candidate, right? It's a respect thing. You're coming to do a job with me. If I can't fund you, then you don't need to disrespect yourself in that way. And I will email you and say very clearly, "Really appreciate the email. Looks great. I'm going to keep it on file. I don't have any funding right now, but I really appreciate the interest." And that's not my clandestine way of telling you no. That's my way of saying, really, I don't have any open positions right now, but I am going to hold on to this. And I keep a running Excel sheet of the people that have expressed interest in a professional way. And when I do have funding come up, I go down the list and I start emailing going, hey, I do have a position open. You expressed interest. Are you still interested? And I'm just to circle back, we'll circle back on that. To circle back on your comment earlier about
Outside the box synergies.
yeah, about emails and that kind of thing. God, I've already lost my train of thought. Where were we going?
Sorry, I derailed you with upper administrative terms. It's
the response thing. The response thing. So for me, 24 hours is my standard. In fact, it's a university standard. 24 hours. If I email a student, they have 24 hours to answer me by definition. If you don't hear back from me in a few days, by God, email me again, because it's gotten buried under this email mat that forms. And especially if you email me at 5:45 on a Friday, for the love of God, follow up early next week, because I'm going to show up and I'm going to start clearing out emails sometime over the weekend. And there's going to be a couple hundred in there, probably most of which are junk. And I may get to you or I may not. So and this came up this week, I was thinking of something. God, they ever follow up? I don't know where we are on that. And I get in my email and go, oh God, I dropped the ball. And that was a week ago. And they haven't said anything. So reach out to the student, go, I'm so sorry. Oh no, we didn't want to bother you. And no, by all means, bother me. It's been a week. You need to follow up with me.
Yeah, and that's my general recommendation too. And please note, students, Dr. Tomachek and Conway and myself may have a very different philosophy than some of your other professors. These are general recommendations that I think will meet all those satisfactions and all the needs of all your professors. But I will brag on us that we do try our best to go above and beyond to help you, because I think we all agree that that's our responsibility as professors, beyond the traditional academic metrics that we're supposed to do. Mentoring you guys and seeing you successful is a priority. And that's why we're recommending this stuff, because we want to see you succeed. And if you don't, you're already off on a wrong foot in all reality. And I really, don't be afraid to bug us if we forget. Like the young lady who emailed me today, I was like 3 days late and I felt horrible because I was doing other things that were really high priority, but I also felt bad because she sent me a really nice email. Like, I really need to get back to her. And then one thing I want to also talk about before we move on to our next topic was what kind of experience you need to be successful. We were going late, which is okay with me. I don't have anything else to do. But I don't want to keep everybody here for no good reason. This is being recorded for later use, but Warren will have to be up at 3 working, answering emails and doing other things. So so one thing I'd like to add to that, and holy shit, I just forgot what I was going to say. Okay. When it comes to emails and timing of the day, I'm a tenured professor now, and what that means is over the course of 5 years, I've demonstrated that I'm capable of being part of the institution and whatnot. So that gives me some freedom in some of the things that I do. And my own personal philosophy is if you email me late in the afternoon, I'm going to get to you in the morning when I wake up. Because in the we don't have 8 to 5 jobs. We work at weird times and basically all the time. But one thing you learn as you become a professor, and for our future professionals here, is you have to learn how to say no at some point for your own health. And that was always a struggle with me. And one of my things now is, if Dr. Conway emails me at 6 p.m. with something I need, I'm going to try my best to answer it because he's my supervisor and he needs that information. Or if the president of the Wildlife Society in Texas chapter needs something, I'm going to try my best to get to him as soon as possible. For you guys, if it can wait, it's going to wait. Until the morning, and I answer my emails first thing in the morning because I get up and I work early, and I try to clear off some of those things before I do my other work. And within that component on the weekend, if Dr. Conway or Dr. Tomachek or somebody needs something, I'll get to it when I can, usually within 6 to 12 hours. And for students, you're just going to have to wait, unless it's an emergency. We'll take care of emergencies, but it's just my own philosophy. Other professors may have similar or different philosophies, but
Blake, was the question about, like, is too late, too early? Is that sending you?
No, this is just one general recommendation I'm providing them. Like when to expect a response from us, and within 24 to 48 hours. And then if it's not an emergency on the weekends or in the evening, we'll answer you as soon as we can the next working day.
Well, and this is a weird, so, yeah, I would ignore it now as students. But one of the things I've learned is there are, well, I guess maybe don't necessarily completely ignore this as students, but there are some people, some faculty, some people in the professional world, for whatever reason, get insulted if I send an email outside normal work hours. Because there's some, I guess, like social pressure that they need to respond. And it's a weird, so my wife actually got reprimanded. She used to work for the Forest Service. And she works, all crazy hours and send emails that when she could get to them, and I guess, her thought process was, it's in your inbox. They'll get to it, when they get to it,
That's my train of thought too.
Yeah. But there she had a colleague who complained that she was sending emails at night or on the weekend because it made her feel bad that other people were working and that she needed to respond during the weekend. And, that gets back to well, that's really a you problem. That's not, people work on different schedules, right? So what Tamerley ended up having to do was actually queue up emails. She would write them and then queue them up to all be sent at 7:45 on Monday morning.
Yep.
And so, which is kind of dumb in some ways, but so, for students wondering about that kind of stuff, there are people that get annoyed by getting emails at random hours. I don't think anybody on this call does.
I don't. I just answer them when I can.
I don't either.
Yeah.
And I send them at weird hours. So it'd be hypocritical if I get irritated by it.
Oh, I love sending out the 4:15 email in the morning. It's a badge of honor. Not during the pandemic, because I've learned to sleep in a little bit. But they're like, you email me at 4:15, you must be awesome. No, I'm just old. I study birds. I get up early. It's nothing gets used. The first time I can answer. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. I will say that is one of those things that it's kind of a strange moment for those of you that might be grad students or thinking about grad school, depending on what you do. When you're up late working and you send an email and your advisor happens to wake up very early in the morning, especially if you do bird work, and your advisor is responding to your emails hours after you sent them because it's the beginning of their day and the very end of your day.
Exactly.
But again, we work weird hours sometimes because that's biologically related to what we're working on. If we're doing night work and we're answering emails in between whatever the hell we're doing, sure. I would suggest that it's a you problem if you don't want that email to pop up and wake you up. By God, don't let it wake you up. I treat email just like the mail, and I will get to it in a timely fashion. I'll check it a couple times. I check it all day long, but that's an advice I have for students too. Check your damn emails.
Do it at least once a day, if not 2 or 3 times.
Yes. You don't have to be constantly tied to it, but even if you're in the field, unless you cannot get email, check your damn emails.
Yep. And to add to that, we get really annoyed when undergrads see their email as only for when they need to use it.
Yeah.
And that's really relevant for students during advising at Texas Tech. If the only time I hear from you is during advising and you don't answer anything that I request of you, and then you start demanding things via email, you go right to the trash can.
Well, and there's a very important distinction between when you opened it and when it was sent.
Yep.
So, when we get this, I get this all the time. Well, I didn't get it until blah, blah, blah. Like, no, that's when you opened it. There's a very big difference. So, that's part of your professional responsibility in building that behavior. And it is a dangerous sort of line to kind of get attached to it. In my daily stuff, I am now. I'm not proud of that, but I am because things do pop up that I need to deal with. It's not all crucially important. I mean, some of it's just, trying to catch up on just some correspondence, but there's a very big difference between when you opened it and, I didn't get it until versus when it was sent.
Yep.
And we had a colleague that would constantly say, I didn't get your email. It went to my trash. It went to my, trash folder. If you're in the TTU email system, I promise you, it is never going to go into anybody's trash.
Yep, it goes.
So
we
don't
get
ever
it.
use that excuse.
We get it. I might get it and accidentally delete it, just on accident. 'Cause I'm clumsy and stupid.
Yeah,
In that case,
I've done
like,
that.
can you resend that? I'm sorry, I think I deleted your email. Or
Yeah.
if they email me later, be like, I got it. I think I just did something stupid, and this is a me problem, not a you problem. And I apologize. That has happened, but I have never not had an email in the TTU system get sent or received. Now, outsides can be a little bit different based on who you're communicating with. The feds have
Yeah.
strict standards about what
Yeah.
they
Well,
can and
and-
can't get and things like that.
A quick story on that, Blake. So, Dave Saltfeld's going to talk in a couple weeks.
Mhm.
And this is one of those things that he's the reason I check my junk box.
Yep.
So he had actually emailed me about that alligator project that I was looking for a PhD student, and it got junked twice. And he finally called and left a message, and he's like, "Man, I've never heard anything. I'm really interested in this project. Like, I never got it." So I started looking and looking and looking. I never used to check my junk folder, and it was there. And so that's also, that does happen. And I'm glad he followed up. He was an amazing student. He's a great colleague and friend.
Yep.
But there, I ran the risk of missing out on him. So it does happen. But he was emailing from Auburn, I think. And sometimes universities have, like, depending on agencies now, it's like this is an outside entity, and it'll kind of route it into a different folder. So that it does happen, but just be aware. We're aware of excuses and things that
Yeah.
people have used in
And
the
we really
past.
don't buy them. Just for the sake of time, let's move on to some other topics. And I'm sorry for the light. I know with my forehead, it looks like the twin sons of Tatooine. I'm trying to remedy that situation. If you
Fair.
don't get that reference, you can get off.
That's better.
So we're emphasizing email communication to you guys because it's really important in the time of COVID. But there's more things you can do to overcome some of those situations or to get your name out there in a positive way. And we actually in the chat, you guys can't see this. The students are actually helping each other out about creative ways to find graduate positions and
Good.
volunteer positions and research positions.
So they're hanging in there. There's not
Yeah,
just like three of them left.
they're starting to drop like flies, but they're doing a really good job of helping.
Hell, I thought at this point we're just talking to ourselves. That's
Hey, we know each other. We can do this all night if we really
oh
want
man,
to.
I mean,
But
Blake,
we need to
but
switch
anyway,
gears.
Yeah, I know. I have a Coke. It's like I need a beer somewhere or something. And so I'll stay on as long as we need to. I just don't want our students to like pass out at their desk. and wake up
My dear Dr. Grisham and Conway, that is why you drink in opaque, nondescript containers.
During the shutdown, I just had a beer in my hand during all these. Like I just didn't care. Given that it's a little bit more official here, I was like, maybe I don't want to, but So I'm really glad to see some of our more experienced students helping out some of the other students online, and that's really cool. And in all seriousness, students, one good way to find out about how to do those things is through the upperclassmen. And if you're at Texas Tech, and we can put you in contact with,
I'll be right back.
go for it, with the upperclassmen who can tell you who you need to talk to about getting those positions, given the various paths. I think Ian Snakeboy here was helping out some of our students who are interested in going to veterinary school about, what are some relevant experience that may help me get into it. And I think those are all good experiences. But that's one of the best ways is someone mentioned the A&M job board, which has research positions for undergrads, both volunteer and paid in the summer. Don't be afraid to reach out to your faculty via email, like we just said. One good way to make yourself stand out is interacting in the classroom in a really professional way. Hey, there's Snake Boy. And Sophie, our president, just said, "Hey, upperclassmen got me to where I am." And if you're an underclassman at Tech, our leaders are leaders for a reason. And one of the good qualities of a leader is they are not going to insult or belittle you based on anything about you or what you want to do. They're there to help. Otherwise, we wouldn't let them be there. The faculty and probably the other members. And I think A&M has a very similar situation.
Exact same thing, Blake. I mean, we had this conversation at our student chapter meeting the other night with the officers afterwards, which is, we had a lot of freshmen show up. It was awesome. Upperclassmen, go grab those freshmen, get to know them a little bit, especially during Corona. Right now, it's tough. make them feel welcome, help them out. And this is kind of the philosophy we espouse at A&M, and I know Texas Tech's the same way. We're all at different stages in the professional ladder. No matter where you are, there is somebody below you, and that doesn't make them less than you. It just means that they're coming up and you used to be them.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's great to go up, but you got to look behind you and stretch a hand out and grab that person and pull them up with you.
Yep, exactly. And we have this little professionalism class to the grad students at NRM, and one of the things I say is, you owe the undergrads because someone gave you an opportunity and now you're in their position. And if you don't see that is an opportunity to help out, I have a serious problem with you. You have a you problem, and his name's Blake Grisham, because I just can't stand the philosophy of not reaching back and helping those behind you become what you are. And I'm here because I had really good mentors, and both starting as an undergrad all the way to where I am now, I still have mentors that I look up to, and they're always looking behind, pulling me up, and that's one of the main reasons I'm here. So undergrads, especially underclassmen, don't be afraid to reach out, because we have trained and placed emphasis to both our upper level undergrads and our grad students, just as Rachel indicated in the chat. They're there to help. And here's a pro tip: if you ask somebody for help and they're rude or disrespectful or dismissive of you, that's a pretty good sign that they have lots of them problems, and you should probably not affiliate yourself with them. Because I've only had one really negative interaction at any meeting ever, and it had nothing to do with any of this stuff. It was everything else. It was data driven. But the thing was, every other interaction I've ever had, ranging from an undergrad to where I'm at now, with any conference within this discipline, regardless if it's TCTWS or Prairie Grass Conference or anything, everything's positive. And if it's not, it's a them problem. That's one of the benefits of being in a small discipline, is we know who the assholes are, and by default they tend to shoot themselves in their foot with their own behavior.
Yeah,
And they tend to flock together too. It's easy to pick them out.
Yeah, it's kind of roaming flocks, like, oh, there goes the douchebags.
Sure. Well, but the thing about that is too, it's like, you see them, don't play with them. They're not good to be played with. Good people build one another up. We're all friends here. We take care of one another. Don't play with assholes. They're not there for you. They're there for themselves. And the good people in this field, which is most everybody, is there to do good things for conservation of wildlife. And those assholes are there for themselves. And they're not going to help you out because they want to help themselves out.
Yeah, and I agree. And Michelle just asked us, and I think this is a really good topic to talk about maybe in the next podcast. She said, "Hey, thanks for all the wonderful information. You're welcome. We don't know if it's useful or not, but this is the god awful truth." But she says, "I was wondering if there would be a podcast stream about giving advice to upperclassmen." Yeah, if there's demand, we'll do that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of different. This is really designed to help our incoming freshmen get ahead of the curve and understand it kind of intersects with what you should do to help get you into grad school. But we are missing a lot of important components for our upperclassmen, and Michelle, I think that's a really worthy topic to talk about.
Yeah. And if you want to give her a quick assignment.
Yeah.
So I think, because I'm sitting here thinking about that kind of thing as well. One of the things that underclassmen, you're still kind of navigating, getting familiar with the university, but the upperclassmen, it's really, really important to start figuring out who's who. Who did so-and-so work with? What do they do? What are the connections? And as even as a sophomore, junior, senior, graduate student, this has become something that I ask PhD students in comprehensive exams, is who are these people? And it's not, and a lot of people like to go down the road of famous ecologists. What did they do? What did that so-and-so do?
No one cares.
Yeah. And so what I've ended up doing is asking PhD students during their exams, names of people, and they're typically from Texas Tech, have Texas affiliations, or people that they should know or actually have met. And so that for upperclassmen, and I think that'd be a really interesting sort of topic in the future. But as an assignment, start putting people together, reading papers, saying, oh, so-and-so collaborate. What's that relationship? How do they know one another?
Yep.
The 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon sort of thing that you referenced earlier,
Yeah.
Blake, it's really weird, like just briefly, I met you when you were working on your master's at LSU. Because you talked to one of my undergrad or one of my master's students that was doing the same thing. And then you shared an advisor with a colleague of mine, right? And John, you were working with Jim, at the time, I think when I first met you,
Yep.
he and I went to grad school together, and I mean, it's a small world, and piecing those things, and those are common ground jumping off points for conversations with these people down the road. So Michelle was her name? Is that who it was?
Yeah.
So, that'd be something I think, Michelle, to work on is really not necessarily just learning facts, but learning who's doing what and who are the players in the field.
Yep.
Because we do know one another.
Yeah, and I'm going to pick on TTU students for just a minute with the current cohort of upperclassmen. And this is in the long term, this is why Dr. Cox and I kind of took over the freshman orientations, and we've had success of getting more underclassmen. And the upperclassmen now are kind of duds in a lot of ways, and that's no offense to all the good people who I know, but that's a broad generalization. And like Dr. Tomachek said, you need to be careful with broad generalizations. In that there's a lot of students who are graduating now who I can't recognize their names.
Yeah, same here.
And I don't know what they're trying to do and whatnot. I wish them the best, but they haven't done what's necessary to be successful. Now, backing up on that statement, the ones who have done the right things are in really good positions right now. And we have a demonstrated history of producing those students, and I'm really proud of them. But one of the consequences of growing in size is we have a number of students who don't want to become involved for whatever reason, and choose not to. And then as they graduate, they start pointing fingers and be like, hey, the opportunities weren't there for me. And the answer is bullshit. And Warren wasn't chair at this time. We were working on that, but there was a senior dinner where I almost went off the fucking rails on the student because she was a pain in the ass, and she was like, you guys didn't do what was necessary to see me through success. Whew. I can feel my cheeks getting mad now because I'm like, bullshit, because you know what? I just spent the past 5 fucking weekends with TWS doing Lester Prairie chicken captures, doing camping trips, taking them to baseball games and doing all that, and you were never fucking there. That's a you problem. And to the upperclassmen who are here, congratulations. And I really want to see you successful, but this is kind of on us as well. We got to do better making sure that our freshmen and sophomore move up to those upperclassmen positions where they are leaders, and our leaders in TWS are cream of the crop. And I'm really proud of the ones that are graduated in positions everywhere now. But there's been this 2-year gap for whatever reason, and that there are most of our constituency in terms of membership TWS are freshman, sophomore, and then the remnants of juniors and seniors who I think will do very, very well for themselves, and then just kind of the rest. And I don't know what the reason is for that. And that's one reason we tried to teach this techniques class, is to grab you at sophomores and be like, hey, you're going to be friends. And James Ray's on this call. He's like, that dinner was rough. He knows exactly who I'm talking about. So Jay Ray here, so his dad's one of our most famous alum, and Jay Ray's making a name for himself, and I'm really proud of himself. I'm really, really proud of Jay Ray. Smiley. He's a graduate student at Mississippi State, working on Morning Dove band return data. And I'm really proud of him. And he's back on the call. That's cool. He's been a grad student for a year or two. I'm glad to see him here. But upperclassmen, if you really want to make an impact, get involved right now, because there is a niche that needs to be filled. And Michelle, I'm glad I know you, and I'm really proud of you. But you may need to grab some of your classmates and be like, these guys don't know you. They care about you, and they want to see you succeed. So why aren't you doing the things that are necessary? That would be the nice thing to do, but the capitalist thing to do would be like, I'm getting mine. So, your choice. So a charge to our underclassmen as you become upperclassmen: stay involved, because you will be successful. Go ahead. I think that John, you had something to add to that.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, to capitalize on that statement too, we see this all the time, right? There's kids that wander around. I don't know you. I've never met you. You've never introduced yourself. I make a point to be around when we're not living in the Corona apocalypse. to be around campus so that you can get to know me. I 100% don't have to do that. I can be elsewhere.
Yep.
But I want to get to know you. I want to help you succeed. And the point that was made about from Dr. Conway, learn who people are and how they relate to one another, where they work. Sometimes you'll start to see these connections like, hey, these 10 people that I've met that are all highly productive and seem to know each other, they all happen to be master's students at the same time at the same place. And this is really instructive. You're going to start seeing, and what these guys from Texas Tech are saying about get to know your cohort, right? Grab you as sophomores, you need to be friends. Sometimes these cohorts are the people that you find success with for the rest of your lives.
Exactly.
So if you know Dr. Roa Lopez from Texas A&M, and if you know Dr. Lewis Harbison at Sul Ross, they were master's students in the same lab at the same time.
Yep.
And it always tickles me to watch them interact because there's a bond there that's hard to put into words. And we've all got those people we worked with, but you're tied to them forever. You're going to be close with them. You're going to understand them really well because you've essentially been in the trenches together.
Yep.
When you start to see some of those tightly knit circles put together, get to know those people. And like I said earlier, work our networks. We're here for you.
Yep.
And that's a big deal. So I couldn't reiterate more what Dr. Conway said. Get to know who some of these people are. If I have a student that comes through, and we've had this, that doesn't know who one of the older faculty in the department is, that's one of the pillars of the field, good God, what have you been doing?
They have a serious them problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we used to play 7 Degrees of Nova Sylvie, by the way. Dear Dr. Sylvie just retired after a career. I can't remember his final count. It was 180, 190 graduate students finished over the years. He has a number, and I can't remember. We used to all know our numbers in terms of with him. But we used to play 7 Degrees of Nova Sylvie. And anybody on the call that knows Nova, the game was find somebody, and you'll find within just a couple of layers somebody that worked for them, with him, or something related.
Yep.
He's been around long enough, and it's this saturation in the field. You're around long enough, it's a small enough field, you get to know everybody, and you work with everybody at some point. So
I agree. And so Dr. Conway and I actually designed that techniques class to be a mini version of the trenches. And we've had success with that. And we are the artillery shells that are raining down upon you. And to be honest with you guys, we are very easy on you in that class, despite what you think. And it's tough for you guys, to be fair, because you haven't experienced field work. And it's a whole new world. And if you love it, then great. If you hate it, then also great, because you've identified you shouldn't do that. That's why you need to take techniques sooner than later, at least with us. And to reiterate what Dr. Tomachek said is, once you have that common bond of struggle, you have a bond for life, because you remember the time that we made you count off to 30 at 4:15 a.m. and when you messed it up, we made you do it again until you got it right. And we purposely tried to do it wrong, make you do it wrong, just so we can yell at you more. And that it forms a bond. And I think the kids that had techniques with us really remember those times. I love that. I'm reminiscing a bit because we missed it this year, but it's by far my favorite class. But get as much experience as you possibly can as an undergrad. And to be honest with some of the freshmen and sophomores, you may have to volunteer a bit. And that's the nature of it. And we're not asking you to go work in a cubicle for 40 hours a week for no pay for like AT&T, like business majors have to. We're saying give it a trial with the faculty or grad student who you're interested in, and see if you like it, and put in all the effort. If you're volunteering, then you are interviewing and or working. So when you're volunteer, it's like, oh, I'm just volunteering, I'm going to hang out. No, never have idle hands. Work your tail off. And I volunteered for a really long time before I had my first position. I think it was 2 or 3 jobs, and here I am today, 15 years later. But we're not going to take advantage of your work. We're going to, like Dr. Tomachek said earlier about master student, I won't hire a grad student either unless they're fully funded, because in my opinion, it's totally unethical to do that. Same for an undergrad. It's really unethical for me to not pay them for the position that they're qualified for. But it is within my own reason and justification to assess if you are qualified. So that's maybe why you have to volunteer for a few of those things. So What we recommend is identify a faculty member and then, reach out very professionally and say, hey, do you have any volunteer opportunities or potential positions open in your research lab for these things if you want to do research. And I think Ian and some of the other students were talking about internships at zoos and rehab centers for students, and those are all good ways. If you're looking for opportunities outside of your institution, look for the A&M job board, and it's on the right hand side there. There are the categories like internships, paid positions, and things like that. Those are really good in summer. My recommendation for students coming into tech is the first summer, take a class or two and enjoy your freedom. The second summer, as a sophomore, take techniques and plan ID in the field, and think about getting a paid position or a volunteer position for the next month after that. By the time you're a junior and a senior, you should have a reputation and paid internships and jobs for the summer in our field. You should not be working as a waiter or a waitress or at Home Depot. If you really want to succeed, you'll take those steps, and you should be in our field in some way. It may not be what we exactly do, but there are plenty of positions out there. And if you really want to be successful, that's where you'll be. Because if you don't do that, you will spend the years after graduation doing exactly that before you can go into a full-time position.
And the thing I would add on to that is for the freshmen that show up, and I said this the other night at our TWS meeting, for the freshmen that show up that are interested and really want to be here, do it now.
Do it now.
You will get so much experience as an undergrad. If you play your cards right, you will be ready to step into those positions when some of your cohort mates are mucking around for years trying to figure themselves out. And no slight to people that figure it out later, but if you can have a competitive edge starting out early, by God, do it. Speaking as somebody that came into this field later and had to make up some ground, you'll save yourself a lot of heartache if you do it earlier in your life.
Yep. So we actually still have half our viewers. So thanks for sticking with us out, guys. That's phenomenal. I figured they were all TK.
Thursday is the new Friday, my dear Dr. Grisham.
That's right. The only thing I really have to do is lab meeting tomorrow and my honey-do list. So, and my nap. Whereas Warren's sitting here thinking about the 75 emails he just has to start his day with, and then the 7 meetings. So, in addition to email communication, get as much experience as you can via the Wildlife Society and other organizations. There's more out there than just us, and if you're interested in Plan ID or Range, or there's other professional societies, and don't be afraid to reach out to us, because we want you to be successful in the things that you want to do with your life, because we do the things that we want to. And I would never say anything, hey, snakes are stupid. Well, they are, but you have to study birds because I do. I'd be like, you go study your stupid snakes and you love it. You just do the best you can. And I'm picking on Ian here, but man, that kid loves snakes. I want to see him study snakes for the rest of his life. He said he loves it. He fucking loves it, man. And that's great. I want all of our students to have that type of enthusiasm about what they do.
He's going to be a Herpa Sherpa is what I call those people, right? And I remember Ian, and I will always remember Ian for his passion for snakes. It's always going to stand out. The other thing, that we all run into with getting experience, we had the other night, Jim Cathy, of course, Warren, you and he went to grad school together. Jim was telling his story and professionalism advice to our students. And something he said really resonated with me. He said, I started out working in this lab for a geneticist, and I wanted to learn all these cool genetic techniques as an undergrad. But I started out washing bottles and plates and tubes, and I was the best damn bottle washer at Texas A&M is what I was. But you know what? I put in the effort, I worked hard, and I learned the things you have to know, which aren't fun, but they're necessary. And then over the years, I learned all the cool things I wanted to learn. I have students that'll start working for me, and I might say, hey, guess what we're doing this weekend? We are washing traps and boiling traps and dyeing traps all weekend long. And we're going to sit there and drink coffee and boil traps together. And it may seem mundane because we're fixing things, getting stuff ready. But you know what? It's necessary, and it's a skill you have to have, but also just the time that you get when we're sitting there doing those things.
Yep. Like for people on the call tonight, you've had 3 hours with us, which is more than most undergrads have in their entire life. So that's a bonus. And my first volunteer job was cleaning rat shit out of Sherman traps, and I volunteered. And this was when there was a hantavirus scare in the East. Not it's always a concern in the West, but in the East, we had to wear the full, Breaking Bad hazmat suits in Arkansas in the summer outside. So it was a sauna. So hopefully that clarifies about some things from experience. And we have a little agenda here. And one of the comments was, "We're big fat hairy American winning machines." Well, not yet. You might be there soon, but learn to volunteer and put your time in, and make yourself stand out in some way. Be your personality, your attitude, your work ethic, your kindness, and your empathy. Those are the best ways. Beyond that, we have two little bits of information here. And one is really minor. It's not what your profession can do for you, but what you can do for your profession. Service is really important. For our underclassmen, that's really not the goal just yet, because we want to help you, and that's our service back. As you grow and develop, you'll be asked to give back, and we'll bring you to the call when it's time. For our upperclassmen, it's kind of start time to give back, and our officers are really good examples of that. The more you give back, the more you get name recognition and a reputation, hopefully a positive one for being that person to give back. And trust me, I don't have to be here tonight, but I want to be here, and that's my way of giving back. And that this is just one of many ways, because it's fun and it's rewarding. So that's a small bit of information. We can touch on that later, maybe with the upperclassmen. But one really important thing that I want to talk about before we go, and this is a really good way to end, is it goes along with the talent, work ethic component, but maybe in a little bit different manner. And you're all in college. You have some idea in your mind about what you want to do and what it takes to get there. And one of the problems we have with high school students coming out of Texas is they're fixated on getting perfect grades, 100 out of 100. And like Warren said earlier with the baseball example, an all-star Major League Baseball player, at least on the batting side, may bat 300 career. You guys, freshmen and sophomores coming in, are fixated on this idea that you have to have a 4.0 to be successful. Good Lord, stop it. Stop being so hard on yourselves, okay? And I know the state puts emphasis on these standardized tests and wants you to be perfect. We know you're not perfect, and we don't expect you to be perfect, because as professionals, you have to bet hedge and put certain resources in certain places, and that means you just shit the bed certain times, and you have to own it. But you're never batting 1,000, and any good, and I'll stand by this statement, any good, kind, caring professor understands that. Now, a caveat: if you're going to professional school, vet school, law school, medical school, they take grades very seriously, and you should too. But a 4.0 won't get you just into vet school. You need to have some experience there too. So keep in mind the things that we're going to say next are: one, be kind to yourself. You don't have to get 100% on all of those tests and all those classes to be successful. What makes a really successful student is someone who is recognized as a kind, caring, compassionate person who has good work ethic, personality, and the experience and service-based mentality, and has demonstrated that from the time as they're a freshman to when they graduate via the things that we have mentioned here tonight. It annoys me to no end to get seniors who are like, "I gotta have an A on that test." Like, fuck you, no, you don't. And to be honest, if I really graded to how I do peer reviews or hold up, the scientific method in a paper, you all would have 1%. It's just we are really easy on you guys, in all seriousness, and grading and some of those things, because we recognize some of those non-quantitative metrics that we see of your class are just as important. Are you there? Are you attentive? Are you asking good questions? Are you not dominating the conversation like I am now? So I'm about to turn it over. But those things are really important, and at least in my opinion. So if you make a C in a class, if it's Chem 2, who gives a shit? You survived, right? And you didn't blow your arm off in the process. If you make a C in NRM class, you might want to start evaluating if you really like that subdiscipline. Like, I think I made a C in genetics as an undergrad. It's like, good Lord, I am not cut out for this in the morning. Dr. Conway and I had a conversation this morning with Parks and Wildlife about some axis deer stuff. And like, I tried to read a genetics paper on this topic, and good Lord, I suck now just as much as I did now in genetics as an undergrad. But I did really good in ornithology. I did really good in population dynamics. I did really good in wildlife techniques. And that's the kind of things I do now. D's don't get degrees in terms of your, at least in terms of your discipline specific classes. At Texas Tech, a D or an F in an NRM class is not passing. And if you find yourself struggling in those classes, one, there's things available to help you succeed, like tutoring and things. But two, based on my knowledge of our faculty and who teaches those classes, most of those classes you shouldn't have a D or F in, because most of those professors have similar philosophies about making sure you guys succeed given you put in the effort. And you might want to have a serious conversation with that professor about what you can do differently. So I'm going to let my co-host chime in here, because I really have nothing more to say to that other than try your best, and if you fail, that's part of the scientific method. Get used to failing.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. This is something that a lot of students struggle with.
Yep.
Because I think, in the high school, prior to college arena, so much emphasis on high performing grades.
Yeah.
And those benchmarks of, you get a 4.0, you get 100%, whatever it is, that puts you in a certain grouping, certain category. All right, we'd all be hypocritical if we said grades weren't important. But I think, an agency or somebody looking at a potential graduate student, if you are a 4.0 student and have zero experience, you're never going to get a job.
Nope.
You're not going to get a position. Minimum for grad school is really a 3.0.
Yep.
A 3.0 and a lot of experience and connections and people that will vouch for you and advocate for you. Those are the sorts of things that you're looking for.
Yep.
And to kind of blend the last topic with this one is relative to experience and getting experience. A lot of students really feel like they've got to specialize. And Ian's really super excited about reptiles and snakes, and that's awesome. But you don't need to.
Yeah.
And for upperclassmen, thinking about careers and jobs and graduate school, don't pigeonhole yourself. Take advantage of those opportunities. And it could be any volunteer, it could be any paid job. If it's in the tangential world of wildlife and natural resources, and that's what you want to do, then do it. I'm not a 4.0 student, never have been a 4.0 student. I didn't get a 4.0 in semesters where I was only taking one class.
Same here.
And I'm not the smartest, but I think a couple of things that really helped me was really getting experience. And even though we've talked about, you don't need to be doing, all right, your primary job, you may need to pay rent, that kind of stuff. We understand that.
We do get that.
I was in the same boat. I was working at a grocery store as an undergrad. I was working full time. And I worked there in high school. I worked there in college. And one of the things that I took from that really has to do with a lot of the personality types of people that are in natural resources.
Yep.
And a lot of people that come into wildlife and natural resource fields are pretty introverted. They don't really like talking. It's very difficult for them to kind of be and actually correspond and be able to carry a conversation. That job helped me, just being able to like small talk and be able to converse with people without getting super deep or super personal or anything along that line. But being able to carry a conversation for a little bit, and those social interactions helped a ton down the future, or in my future, in terms of being able to communicate with other people. Yeah. Finding those common grounds. A more well-balanced human is one that I think we all strive to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ones that are so driven and getting A's and straight A's and a 4.0, they're kind of hard to tolerate.
Yeah, they're hard to tolerate. Yeah.
You know, and so be thinking about those sorts of things, and it's you're investing in yourself, and be willing to take a chance on you.
Yep.
And learn from those successes and failures. And, you know, if somebody reaches out and gives you an opportunity, take advantage of it. And because they see something in you.
Yep.
Do yourself proud, do them proud. But the academic side, that'll fall into place.
Yep.
But don't kill yourself on that.
John, you had a comment you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, just kind of a add on to that. You know, for the folks that say it's hard for me to volunteer, you know, I don't have a lot of money. I'm struggling to get through. Hey, I feel you. I worked 3 different jobs in undergrad. I do not come from a family that had any money. There was nothing there. And I think honestly, kind of like Dr. Conway said, those are some of the best, most formative experiences I had. One of the things that made me work to get through school was I worked graveyard shift at a factory that made fiberglass armor for Humvees and Bradley vehicles. It was in early days of the Iraq War, and IEDs were a problem. So anyways, I worked 12-hour shifts sanding fiberglass for a living, basically. You want some character building that makes you want to really work hard in school. It's like, why am I doing this every night? Well, you learn. But those opportunities that these folks mentioned, this is one of those things. Take them when they come. And the saying that I've heard for years that I really appreciate is, don't let classes get in the way of your education. There's going to be opportunities that come that are worth taking. And I get kids ask me all the time, why I want to come to the field with you, but I don't know if my professor is going to let me out of class. They may not.
Yep.
But you've got to make that investment choice for yourself. If that's a day you can miss, that's going to be a benefit for you to miss that class, catch up on it later, get notes from friends. I'm not saying shirk your course. I'm saying
shirk your course. I am.
Okay.
Dr. Tomacek, I am.
I'll leave you with that topic with one good story. So if you know anything about early 20th century wildlife restoration, yeah, Warren.
Yeah, I'm going to need to go. Timberlake,
Yeah, we're about to end up here.
Yep.
I'm going to final. So see you
All
later,
right.
Dr. Conway. Yeah,
All
we're
right, thanks,
finishing up, and then I have one more thing to say, and then I'm going to let Dr. Tomacek finish, and then I'll end the call. So go ahead.
All right,
Okay.
sorry.
No, you're good.
It's late. I didn't expect to go this long, but hey, I've had a good time. It's nice catching up with you guys.
I've been smelling supper for a while, so I'm going, ooh.
I'm gonna have a bowl of cereal, so I think my wife's ready to sleep.
What kind is it? Is it Count Chocula? Because that's
Probably
what you
Fruit Loops. And if I eat this late,
So Nova Silva used to tell a story. If you know anything about early 20th century wildlife restoration, most states did not have a deer season. In the modern era, you know, deer hunting was closed. There weren't enough deer. And he tells the story of being an undergrad, and the first modern deer season in Kansas happened when he was an undergrad. He was at K-State. And I asked him, I said, well, how did that go? And he goes, well, we had a test that day in one of my wildlife classes. Well, what did you do? He says, I skipped the test because I got drawn to go hunt on the first modern hunting day for deer in the state of Kansas. And by God, I was going to be there for that.
Yep.
Fair enough. So I get those experiences, get them early, get them often, and integrate yourself in those networks that are going to help you get there.
Yep. And I agree. I tell this to undergrads all the time, especially in those basic courses, those chemistry courses, philosophy courses, they just don't get it. And I understand the struggle there. But you know what? I don't remember any of those classes when I was an undergrad. And I do remember the ones I skipped to go do fun things with wildlife. Your NRM professors at Tech aren't going to give you any grief if you need to go on a deer capture or a plant ID competition or a prescribed burn. They're going to support that. I know that for a fact. And don't let the classroom get in your way of your education is something Henry Wright said at Texas Tech. He was a former chair. Many consider him, the modern day, father of prescribed burning. And we say that a lot too. Don't let the classroom get in the way of your education. Yeah, you can learn a lot in the classroom, but you can learn just as much outside of the classroom through the experiences. Everything you are doing now is an investment into your future, and the more you invest is a direct return. This is one of those rare situations where you have a direct return on your investment. It may not all work out that way financially, but at least professionally, the more you invest now, the more you get in return. And I'm going to end with two things. You're going to make mistakes. We all do, and I make mistakes every single day. If you make a mistake, it does not mean your career is over. What it means is you should do your best to remedy that mistake, be an apology or some measure of sincerity to say, hey, I messed up. And I can provide examples from my own career in the future where that happens. Just own it, okay? Don't double down because that's a good way to get excommunicated, okay? And become part of the asshole group. And two, Warren said something that I think is really important, and I'm going to end with that. And thank you guys for sticking with us tonight, Dr. Tomacek. I know your supper is ready, but Warren said something that really resonated with me via communication with some of my former students. Is sometimes I get text and messages and stuff said, "Hey, thanks for vouching for me. I really appreciate it." They're later on in their career said, "Thanks for seeing something in me that I didn't see." And that's it pulls at my heartstrings. We see a lot in you guys that you may not see in yourself, and that's because we have enough experience and wisdom to know what is special about you, even though if you don't know yet. So when you're undergrads and you don't know, your own path or what you're trying to do, I guarantee you someone's paying attention. And the only thing you really need to do is make sure that that's positive attention. Everything else will work out. And it's like, developing young baseball players. A good coach knows what the talent is going to be in the future based on what they see now. And we have certain students who just are going to be all-stars, and we know from the get-go. One's with Dr. Tomacek now. But not everyone's going to be that person, and that's okay. You can make valuable contributions even if you're not going to be the most famous baseball player known to man. Most of us, including myself, we just have something to contribute, and someone saw something in us, and we see that in you too. And you're always free to ask us. We'll be like, "Hey, I think you're really good at this." I had a young student now who has a law degree, who basically thought that she had no value and all this stuff. But I noticed her one day in public. I'm like, "You're really good at coding, much better than anyone else." And she went to law school and now works in Houston. But she's like, "I never knew I was good." I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, I can't do what you do." Well, no, I've been doing this for 20 years. You've been doing it for 20 minutes. But you obviously picked up on it, and I can make some deductions that in 5 or 10 years you're going to have talent at something, at picking out the fine details and being able to convert it. I think that's why she's a good attorney now, is she can pick out the minor details and convert it in her head to something that makes sense. So we see value in you guys, and don't be surprised when we vouch for you and you don't know why. It's because we see potential. I don't know person specific, but we recognize it. So with that, I'll end. John, do you have anything else to add?
One thing I agree with everything that Dr. Grisham's saying. One thing I would add on top of it too is there are a million different ways to contribute to conservation. And so his story about the student that's a lawyer now, you may find a path while you're an undergrad and you go, "I am never going to be a really good field biologist. It just doesn't suit me. But I want to make a difference."
Yep.
Man, I would be tickled to death if there were more lawyers out there that had undergraduate degrees in NRM or wildlife or whatever your degree plan is.
Yep.
If you want to make a contribution to conservation, by God, you do it. And part of the reason we're here is to help you find out what you're good at and to really tack into that one. So we're all good at different things too. If you ask us, we'll tell you.
Yep.
And we're all humans. And so that's the thing I would say. And if you find out this is not the degree for you, this is not the path for you, there's no shame. It doesn't bother us if you say, "Hey, I'm trying to figure this one out. I had this course. Is this really what my career is going to be like?" Those are good conversations to have because you are investing in yourself. So I guess that's my parting shot and my parting thought.
Yep. So with that, I never expected this to go 3 hours, but I am perfectly okay with it. John, I've had a great time with you and Dr. Conway. Students and people who are still, there's not very many left, but that's okay. I expected people to drop off like flies. Thank you guys for sticking with us. We're going to do this on a monthly basis, so they will probably go a little bit longer, and they will be uploaded in case you need like a weekend to listen to all of us rambling. But we hope this is of value, and we enjoy doing it, and we're going to evaluate how this works and doesn't work as we go forward. But thank you guys for tuning in. Dr. Tomacek, I think I'm going to go eat some cereal. I think you might have a better supper lined up. Enjoy it. And for all of our students who chimed in tonight and was on the chat, thank you guys so much. We hope this was useful, and we'll do more and better fun things in the future. And we hope to see you successful. And please email us, but include the necessary information. so you guys have a good night and a safe weekend, and we'll see you soon. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, John. See you later, bud.
Take care, buddy.